Okay, everyone. Welcome to the second episode of Hometown Radio Podcast, Hometown Radio Club podcast. Last time I had a bunch of other people here that you may or may not recognize. Okay, who am I kidding? You know, they were all much more famous than I am. But yeah, so today my special guest, I'm trying to do a more one-on-one format here, inspired by Kemi Boy G's videos. Uh, I feel like there's more room to go in depth and stuff like that. So I'd like everyone to give a warm welcome to LynxGriffin. Please introduce yourself and what you're known for in the fandom.
Oh, hello. I'm happy to be here. Thank you for having me. Yes, I'm LynxGriffin. I'm mostly known in the fandom for fan comics and stuff like that. Back in the Undertale days, I did Dogs of Future Past, and that really took off in terms of like, oh, a Tumblr comic that got attention for that, at least in this particular fandom. And then for Deltarune, the next one that took off was Paper Trail, which I started pretty much immediately after Chapter 1 came off. I was just so excited with, Chapter 1 of Deltarune, the survey program, that I'm like, I have to just draw what I think will happen, and did that for quite a while. And luckily I finished it before Chapter 2 came out, because it ended up going in a very different direction. But I'm still happy with doing that. And since then, been still doing comics. I'm also doing an AU called Deltarune, which I hope I can finish before Chapter 6 is done, but that's very much more AU territory than canon-based stuff. And otherwise, I do enjoy chatting on streams. I made one theory video, which has been interesting. And
Oh yeah, stocks on the up and up.
Stocks are on the up. Stocks are on the up. I was like, oh my goodness, there we go. A little bit more evidence. I hope it gets confirmed in the later chapters in some form, and not just kind of like, oh, we're going to leave this up to interpretation kind of thing. But we'll see. But the stocks are up.
Yeah. And for everyone in the audience who isn't familiar with your theory video, can you give a quick rundown? Because it's actually quite popular in some of the circles I hang out in.
Yeah. Theory was basically that Susie is half human. I'm trying to remember like how it just kind of came to me. I think like, because I also answer a bunch of asks on Tumblr, and somebody sent me something about, I'm sure it was about blood, the blood lore thing everybody loves, but I was, that thing. I was trying to like refute that, because I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. And then I started thinking on it, and I was like, wait, what if she's half human? This could answer these questions about, okay, what's going on with her backstory? Why did she specifically, target Chris for, for bullying and not any of the other kids? Explain some stuff about, how she feels weird about her tail, et cetera, and kind of that inspired me. I did another fan comic for that, which took off. I think people liked that more than theory itself, because the comics, at least, even if they're wrong, they, they're still fun little stories on their own. And so I kind of leaned into that, and I'm like, oh, this could be a really interesting way to answer these questions we have about, Susie's backstory, kind of what the relationship is between humans and monsters in this universe, stuff like that. This could relate to stuff concerning her relationship with Chris's own relationship with their humanity, et cetera. But I was also mostly the thought of like, okay, this is neat, but they probably won't do this actually in canon. And then we got chapters 3 and 4, and it was like, oh, wait, there's more evidence for it. Is it happening? And then chapter 5 came out, and it's like, oh, there is more for it. Okay, I guess this could just happen.
Yeah. It was like, for me specifically, the thing that kind of sold me on your theory that Susie is half human, it was like, for me, this is a really weird specific detail. At the beginning of chapter 5, you do like that dress up mini game with Susie, and they make a reference to Boggy, Beast of Mighty Nature in that particular section. For those who don't know, Boggy, Beast of Mighty Nature was an Osamu Tezuka movie made, I believe, in the 90s. It was an anime where a cat was genetically experimented on to turn her into like a cat furry. And
Fascinating.
it immediately got my brain thinking about like all sorts of like gastery experiments, right? Maybe not necessarily genetic experiments, but something like that would lead to a half human, half monster character. But more realistically, the Gerson dialogue from the Undertale anniversary is probably much more relevant to that.
Yeah. And I guess even if we're talking inspirations, I didn't know this was the case, but until I saw this pointed out elsewhere. But like Toby has brought up, I think Breath of Fire 2 quite a few times, including in the anniversary, as being like one of his inspirations. And apparently, Ryu, one of the main characters of Breath of Fire 2, is half human and half dragon. And like the guts stats from that are used in Deltarune for like Susie's gut stats are really important, also used by Ryu in Breath of Fire 2.
Yeah, that would do it.
Like I'm always a little hesitant to be like, oh, it's related to like this inspiration sort of thing, but we do know he wears his inspirations on his sleeve, so if it happened, it could have been like in response to like, hey, what if you had a half human, half dragon person? What if you kind of went in the opposite direction of it? Because normally when you do that kind of thing, it's like, oh, a person who, looks completely human, but oh, they've got their secret dragon tail or horns or eyes or whatever like that. And it would be fun to do it in the opposite way, where it's a character that, looks like a monster, has lived among monsters, but actually felt ostracized for other stuff because of where she came from before. I think it could also play into like a bunch of overarching themes in Deltarune about basically rejecting binaries, becoming your own person, or a larger discussion topic. But yeah, I think it would be really interesting.
Yeah. Now, before we get into the meat and potatoes of our respective impressions on Chapter 5, like the specifics in terms of what we think is going on with the plot, I would like to hear about your initial like first impressions of Chapter 5. What exactly stood out to you? How did it make you feel? Was it fun? Things like that. Anything that comes to mind when you were first playing Chapter 5.
It was interesting. I think that people had kind of mixed reactions to Chapter 5, and my initial first reaction, especially when I finished the chapter, was like, wait, there has to be more, right? There has to be more. We can't stop here. There's so much still like left unanswered. Like what's like a lot of the major questions still were not clear. Like, okay, what's the deal with, the knight? Not clear. What's the final prophecy? Not clear. What's going on with, Carol's part of the conspiracy? It's not clear. So, and also stuff with like the festival being a little built up. But so at first I was kind of like, oh, we didn't get much. And then as I sat with it more, I was kind of like, okay, in terms of pacing, we still have 2 chapters left. This is kind of the end of the second act, basically. And we still got plenty of time to get these answers, answers sort of thing. And what we focused on mostly in the chapter was the relationships for the characters. Like, this was definitely the shipping chapter. We had a whole, Giselle canon, yay. I've been on that since.
Yeah.
Although I will say, this chapter got me Cruziel pilled. I think that's going to be endgame. But basically, overall, this chapter was very much focused on relationships. So I think this was basically Toby hitting us over the head with a giant squeaky hammer labeled, hey, how the characters feel and care about each other is really, really, really important to the plot. So don't dismiss it.
Yes, yeah.
It's building up for other stuff.
And to your point about the whole thing about like, oh man, is that it? I can't believe it's over. I clocked in 10 hours after chapter 5.
This was the longest chapter for me to play.
Yeah. And so I look at that, and sometimes I see people saying, well, there's no way Toby's going to be able to fit all this plot development and all this other important stuff in the last 2 chapters. And I'm like, 10 hours. If the last 2 chapters are 10 hours each, that's another 20 hours. Now, there's no guarantee they're going to be that long. But if they are 20 hours, collectively, then I'd say that's a lot of time.
That's plenty of time. I mean, heck,
it's almost an entire day.
You could still do it. You could cover that material in half the time. Like, if the next 2 chapters were like 5 hours each, you could still cover everything.
Yeah, definitely.
It's an interesting thing being on the other side of like not knowing the full story, and kind of waiting pacing wise, even though it's good for you to do that. So again, my initial reaction was, oh, I feel like I'm missing something. There must be more. But as I sat with it more, I'm like, okay, no, I'm actually pretty happy with what we got. At least in terms of gameplay, this was the most fun chapter to play. Like, I am not much of a
Oh yeah.
gamer TM,
Oh
like
yeah, same.
platform or anything like that, but this was
Mm-hmm.
ridiculously fun. As somebody who's not very good at that kind of stuff, it felt
Mm-hmm.
very seamless, and it has me excited for like
Mm-hmm.
what other ways we can try different kinds of gameplay and stuff in future chapters.
It was a ton of fun. So like
It was really fun.
I feel like I got lost in the sauce while playing that chapter because I just did not give a crap about the plot for the most part while playing. And that's the first time like a game has done that to me since I was like 15 years old. So I felt between all of like the, high school drama of it all and the adventure and whimsy of chapter 5, I really did feel like I was 15 again. I guess that's funny coming from a person with a school uniform on their persona, but like it yeah, I don't know. I just felt so inspired to go out and create. I felt like I was learning how to draw for the first time again. I don't know how else to put it. That energy was just so strong. It was like, man.
Yeah, it was very fun. It was fun to try and solve puzzles and stuff like that. I didn't feel super stuck on anything. I felt like, okay, if I keep trying it, I can get it, kind of thing. I think the one place where I experienced like frustration was the flowery boss battle, and that eventually got nerfed, so hopefully I don't have to worry about that again.
Uh-huh. Mm-hmm.
Also, I got stuck on first encounter with Aqua. I keep getting stuck on her. She kicks my ass so much.
Yeah. Is it the knife attack? The one with the side, the knives coming in from the side?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or the spinning ones. Like, okay, all of the attacks. Like,
Yeah.
need more party members.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was really fun
Mhm.
to play, and even like the secret boss, I finally beat Pink, and at no point was I like super frustrated or like even with the unfair bomb attack, and the fight as a whole did not feel unfair. It's like, okay, I can do this if I keep practicing and focusing. So I thought it was pretty well designed in that way.
Yeah. The super bosses or I guess we should have probably put a spoiler warning, but it's been a month since the game came
sorry,
out.
we're probably gonna talk a lot of spoilers.
I'll probably just add a spoiler warning in post, but no, that's my fault. I should have but if you're watching this a month after the game came out, chances are you've already played through all of it, right?
I hope so, because I'm sure we're gonna have to bring up a lot of recent spoilery stuff.
Yeah.
Anyway, so
Pink's boss fight kind of blindsided me because it's built up, it's there, like it should have, it speaks to Toby's general writing style, which is a plot twist should not make you say, "Oh, I didn't see that coming." It's supposed to make you say, "I should have seen that coming."
yeah.
Right? And Pink was kind of that to a T, and I loved the hell out of that fight. It was hard. It took me a few tries, but I finally got it, and it's a lot of fun. Flowery was also just phenomenally fun. It was hard, right? It was like one of the harder fights. It took me, I think, 2 tries, and I'm glad that Toby made it so that Green shows up and it's like, here, you can have all your stuff back. Like, thank you, Green, really doing me a solid here.
Meanwhile, it took me like, I don't know, 10 tries. It took a lot of tries for me. I'm not a good game player, so
no, me neither.
I was like,
Me neither. I'm really rusty at games, and it makes, I get it, right? But yeah, Flowery's fight was the first time a main boss battle theme was more fun to me than like any of the super boss themes.
Yeah, it was a great theme. I really liked that one.
Yeah. I saw a video comparing it to one of Toby's older compositions, Sun Slammer, or actually, was that Toby? That might have been someone else.
Yeah, Toby did. I'm pretty sure he did Sun Slam.
Okay. Yeah, like someone pointed out on YouTube that it sounds like Sun Slammer, and I was like, yeah, I can kind of hear it. Either way, absolute banger. I love that he adds like pseudo lyrics to his music.
The anime lyrics.
Yeah. When I first saw 10 foot 20, I was like, what?
What does that mean?
But yeah,
But what?
yeah. Well, he's the large man in the closet, right? That's why he's 10. He's the 10 foot man, right? He's the large person in the closet. Um,
Oh, closet night. Yeah,
God.
I do think this chapter had a lot of I think collaborations that Toby did, because I know did this with Flowery. I think this one was this the one with Camellia? Like Camellia had.
Yes.
I know Insane in the Rain. As soon as
Yeah.
that came up, I was like, oh, I know that remix. So
I
I
believe.
think that's really neat that he was doing like with the music something that people mostly just attribute to him. That he was still like, nah, I'm gonna get in, my friends and people I respect, other colleagues, to plus this stuff up even more. So
yeah, I believe Camilla did the Pink Boss music ?
Oh, did they?
Maybe. I'm not sure.
I know there's like Hatsune Miku in that.
Yeah, because he's credited
I
as.
thought Camellia did the Flower Man song, but maybe I'm wrong.
Maybe no. I think he definitely did do that one. It's just like in the credits, he's credited as having composed ? So I'm like, wait, which one did he actually do? Yeah. Yeah. I have a funny story. I actually bumped into Camilla like at a virtual furry convention back in like 2021, a few months after chapter 2 came out. I was at a virtual furry convention called JMOF, Japan Meeting of Furries, and there was this guy in the corner just standing there, and I didn't know who he was, right? So I struck up a conversation in Japanese, and he replies in English. I'm like, oh, well, this guy's English is really good. And I'm like, hey, where do you practice your English? He was like, oh, it's my job. And I'm like, oh, what's your job? And he's like, oh, I'm like a freelance musician. And I'm like, oh, can I hear your music? And he tells me his channel, and I look it up. I'm like, oh, you're like you're the guy who does all those Undertale Deltarune remixes. And he's like, yeah. So, I ask him, oh, you must really like Deltarune. Do you have any theories? And he's like, oh, I can't really comment on that because he's like, oh, I'm friends with Toby, so I can't really comment on that. I was like, oh,
he's already told
okay.
him.
Yeah.
Spoilers.
Yeah. I was like, oh, my bad. I almost spoiled the game for myself. Had he like not been, had he not like warned me about that, maybe
my NDA, please.
My NDA, yeah. I have him on Discord, but I haven't spoken to him since. It's just really funny though that he's on there.
That's really cool though. That's so awesome.
Yeah. Like I said, it just kind of happens. I run into people and they end up like talking to me one way or another. But yeah, so it sounds like your first impressions were broadly very positive on chapter 5. I know.
Think of like I disliked it. It was always kind of like it was not what I was expecting. I think also what I didn't expect was it felt like the festival had been built up a whole lot in terms of like, okay, something big is going to go down at the festival. That was the impression I got. And that's why I kind of put the festival as having happened after the Dark World stuff, but we did it all beforehand. And nothing really super big goes down. They just have a really nice date where, again, it's a lot of relationship focused stuff. And like, again, we had like this whole Ferris wheel built up, and then, depending on what you pick, it's just a nice scene with two of the characters. So
the Ferris wheel is so dinky. Yeah. The Ferris wheel is so dinky. Like
it's a dinky little Ferris wheel.
Yeah.
Noelle was correct. The Cyberworld one's better.
Yeah, the Cyberworld one is really big, and so everyone thought, okay, they're gonna put the Ferris wheel, past the police tape, and we're gonna like have a big Ferris wheel there, and then we get like this little Ferris wheel in the corner that doesn't even go all the way up because Sans just stops it halfway up for whatever reason.
Like, I can't be bothered.
Yeah, Sans can't be bothered. I do agree that there was a lot of build up to the festival, and I personally expected there to be like mini games, but I imagine
might get something like that too.
Yeah, but I imagine at some point what must have happened is they were like, okay, no, we got to get this game out. We can't just spend all our time making mini games, right?
Yeah, especially if like your priority is the Dark World stuff. Okay, they put their priority there because that was really fun to play.
Yeah, maybe maybe in like 10 years we'll get like Deltarune definitive edition or whatever, and then they'll add a bunch of mini games in there, director's cut or something. Um, director's cut, but I yeah, the actual mechanics of the festival, it wasn't as in depth as I expected it would be, but I like the atmosphere. The atmosphere was so on point. Like when Noelle joins your party and it has like the festival music, I was like, oh, this music is so cute, right? It's adorable.
That's how it's meant to be. Yay! It's just very cute.
Yes, and I I I kind of there's like a lot of little things that you can miss at the festival. Like, for example, if you go into the church and you interact with the bowl before you talk to Caddy, you miss some pretty important dialogue. And I was like, "Ugh."
That's what happened to me. Like I went to the bowl before I talked to Caddy, and then I went back heard later. It's like, oh, she mentions the demon summoning. If you don't talk to her first, I'm like, wait. That's important. I missed it. No, and I also missed Alfie's hanging from the ceiling because I missed the little bit in the corner and all that stuff. But it was really nice. Like, I find it kind of funny, honestly. People are like, "Oh, Susie's gonna be grounded or go to jail because of the destruction for the church," and then you actually get there, and Alvin's like, "Yeah, that happened, but I was just so touched by this letter, and it's fine. The angel's just weird."
Like, the angel's like a cat, right? Sometimes they just do our. Yeah. We can get back to cats later, but I
actually kind of thought that Alvin would have been kidnapped or something because of shelter codes. So when I saw him, I was like, "Oh, good, he's still here, yay!" But I did think that it was nice. We got that sweet moment where he did recognize the fact that this letter was for him from his dad, and it made him want to change and write stuff. It's like, oh, good, mission accomplished. Garrison did it, yay! So I was happy about that.
Yeah, I wanted to talk a bit about how you can miss the demon summoning dialogue. One of Toby's, I guess, design philosophies, which seems to come from a lot of Japanese game dev stuff, is kind of gently frustrating the player. And what I mean by that is you think about the original Animal Crossing game, for example, and how if you don't play long enough, you get cockroaches in your house, or if you reset the game, Mr. Rossetti comes out to yell at you. Those are like ways that the game kind of gently pushes back at you. And that kind of thing is baked into Toby's design philosophy, and it is very interesting. It actually adds a lot of spice to his writing, or it adds just the right amount of spice, I would say.
It makes it so interesting just because as a player, I'm like, oh, I want to make sure I get all of the important dialogue and stuff. So I'll make sure and do little things like the items and, punch bowl and stuff first before I talk to the important people.
Yeah.
And then, oops, that got turned around on you.
Yeah, exactly. But it also, it personalizes your experience, right? Toby is he's writing for an internet audience in mind, which means he knows people are going to be comparing notes. He knows people are going to be uploading videos. So what do you do? How do you write around that? And the answer is you make it so the game gently pushes back on people to a point where it makes sense to go online later to look up what you missed. And now I do have my frustrations, about that particular style of development, right? I think it's very annoying that you can miss that catty dialogue, but at the same time, it's also something logically I completely understand. It's just kind of how he rolls, and that's a very valid philosophy to have.
At the very least, it makes the world feel more real and the characters feel more like people. Like, okay, you are not going to do this. This is not going to happen if you don't do this way, like in real life. And that's just not something you go back and dialogue tree your way through.
No, that's absolutely true. It does make the characters feel more real. And it is a realistic, Caddy crashing out, and locking you out of, all the other dialogue options 2 chapters in a row makes perfect sense for the context of those scenes. So, in chapter 4, if you...
Right, that happened twice. Oh my god.
Yeah. Chapter 4, you tell Susie, or rather, you ask Caddy about Susie in chapter 4. She immediately just locks you out of all the other dialogue options, right? And then
Shut you down.
yeah, so and that's a completely reasonable crash out, right? She's not going to be like, "Oh, you're talking to me again. What now?" Right? She's just going to be like, "Don't talk to me or my family ever again."
You're my snake son ever again.
Yeah, don't talk to me about snake son ever again. Which is funny because Jockington is cool with Susie, at least as far as I can
I love
tell.
Jockington. Even when he grew, people were like, "Oh no, he grew the beard." And I'm like, "Well, we knew that was going to happen, and also he looks funny." So.
Yeah. I think the existence of Jockington growing the beard was meant to kind of underscore how granular the prophecy is, right? Like Toby likes to, I call it layering, where he likes to put in other pieces of relevant information underneath jokes. He does it all the time, right? And that's so the Jockington prophecy panel is a really good example of this, where you look at it and you're like, haha, funny, and then you think about it for a second, you're like, wait, why does the prophecy know something that specific, right?
Yeah. It does make I guess kind of navigating around the dialogue a little tricky sometimes, because you're constantly in this state of, okay, is this just a joke, or is there something under this joke that I can't see yet? Like, what is your joke hiding? Is it nothing? Is it something? I don't know.
Yeah. Recontextualization is another big thing he does. I think I brought this up in the last podcast. I don't remember, but I talk about it a lot anyway, which is he will make a joke in the script and then later on recontextualize it, and suddenly it's not so funny. And a really good example of this is Susie in chapter 1 being like, Ross's like, "Hey Susie, why don't you say something you want to hear?" And she says, "You are now on ban from free ham sandwich day." But then as you go out, you hear that and you're like, haha, really funny joke. And then later on, you kind of piece together that she's probably starving. Yeah, she's yeah. And it's like, oh yeah, that's probably not as funny as it was.
It's like, it's still funny, but at the same time, it's like there's now again this other layer of like that's less funny and more emotional, I guess.
Well, some people had that reaction to Susie's Castletown dialogue in chapter 5, where if you interact with Rousey's fridge, she's like, haha, you eat when you're hungry. And it's like, oh wait, that's no, Susie.
Susie, that's what you should be doing too, please.
Exactly.
Just like, can I have like actual ingredients in my fridge? And he's like, yeah, sure. And she's like, I could put peanut butter on the pine cones. It's like, it's a joke, but it's also like, Susie, you actually do need actual food and not just pine cones.
Going back to the church real quick though, I do think it's, and we can get into it later, I think it's notable that Noelle has been characterized in a way where she's kind of bored of a lot of things, right? Nothing, like, she likes things that scare her, right? And things don't really surprise her anymore. She mentions like, oh, it's the same stuff every year. And then Alfie's an Undertale character being the one to like scare her. That stood out to me. Like, I don't know what it means yet, but it raised an eyebrow. It was like, I wonder why.
Interesting. It was very interesting. Yeah.
Very, very interesting.
Very, very.
Well, it's because
we could get a little bit more info just on what Alfie's role is in all of this anyway. It feels like there's just something on the cusp there, and it still hasn't really come to fruition or anything like that. But yeah, for Noelle, it's we definitely got a lot this chapter about how she is pretty desperate for, some kind of change.
Yes, and I guess Alfie's is also, I think, implied to be relatively new to the town. She kind of
like it, yeah.
She's an outsider for the most part, so that also kind of, I forget where they imply that she's an outsider.
I think the implication is more with Undyne now that I think about it. Like, Alfie's is considered like, okay, she's a new teacher compared to Toriel, who's been there longer. But it sounds like Undyne is the one that's moved in more recently, hasn't really gotten to know everyone yet. So I'm guessing at the very least, Undyne is newer to the town than Alfie's is.
Oh, and that would explain why Carol was showing Undyne the shelter. If you, according to Alfie's dialogue in the church, right? She says that she saw Undyne and the mayor by the shelter. Which, as a side note, this is something I've been ranting about in like various Deltarune circles I'm in. The fandom continuing to call the shelter the bunker is not a big deal. However, I do think the specific wording of shelter is really important here, right? Because it's being positioned
It's true.
as a spot to survive, right? And then you think about Castletown, which is being positioned as Susie's second home. Rousey kind of goes out of his way to be like, "Oh, I want this place to be a spot you guys can rest in every now and then. I want it to be a place that you guys feel comfortable in." And so to me, the shelter and the Castletown Dark World are kind of they're kind of thematically linked in some kind of way. And I think the word shelter is very important in that respect. It's gonna there's probably there's all this referencing to biblical floods, right? Like,
oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so it's like, okay, you guys can keep calling it bunker. That's fine. That's not a big deal. But I think by doing that, you kind of obscure how important the word shelter is in this context.
What I find interesting, I don't know, especially comparing like Castletown and the shelter as like places of refuge, and Alfie's kind of suggesting, I don't know if the shelter is actually like a safe place. People say it is, but I don't know. I'm kind of weird about it, and everybody else being like, stay away from it. If we get the roaring, we get a giant flood that's happening. If instead of people using the shelter for its intended purpose to try and escape this storm, that's what Castletown becomes for much of the Lightner people, is basically alternate shelter.
Which, shout out to Brix, right? That kind of touches on Brix's submarine Castletown idea. It's not one-to-one, but like I feel like Brix is kind of on the right path there. I don't necessarily agree with like the full thing, but they are definitely on the right path. And if I don't know if you ever watched that one, it's a pretty early theory from the Chapter 2 era. They made a video called Submarine Theory, which posited that the Dark World in the closet is a kind of submarine that can navigate the depths. It kind of, and I look at that, and that could happen. I don't know if I 100% agree. However, the premise of a vessel that protects you from the flood of darkness, then I can get behind that. So I think Brix is onto some magic here. I think Brix is like onto something here, and I wonder if could ever talk to them about it. Like, hey, do you ever want to talk about that a bit more? I'd like to hear you revisit that. Yeah, I'd like to hear them revisit that. They also made, they're also known for like a really interesting fan game called Soul Blazers, which expands on the NES. Yeah, it expands on the like NES board games from Chapter 3. But yeah.
I could see it going that direction just because, oh boy, is water and floods and stuff a theme in this game, all over the place, constantly.
As Andrew Cunningham like said, right? And yeah, did you watch that video? It's really good.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's really good.
Yeah.
Looking forward to the second half because at least the idea of like ink being kind of this element of the Dark Worlds as like a liquid that you use to create fiction from has been on my mind for a while. That was kind of what the premise I was using for like pre-chapter 3 and 4. My knight candidate was actually Garrison, not in the Oberon Smog.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's not character.
Yeah.
Interested in was the idea of Garrison as a fiction writer and how that relates to like, the Dark World kind of being metaphors with fiction and stuff like that. And I'm like, okay, the concept of ink as, this flood that, will take over a page, and if you are writing something and then you have ink spilled upon it, then whatever words you wrote on it are meaningless. Like the Darkners have purpose as long as they're in the dark world, but then they're crushed by darkness, by too much darkness basically makes them lose their purpose the same way. Too much black on your page means it's not readable, kind of thing. I was kind of playing with those kinds of ideas, and again, Garrison being a fiction writer, I could see something interesting happening with that. But I was really happy with what we got in canon in Chapter 4 anyway, with Garrison, because it still touched on that stuff of the relationship between, fiction and fiction writing and all that stuff. But we got Mentor Garrison instead, which I really loved. So I was not happy to be wrong on that front. Or I was happy to be wrong on that front. Sorry.
Yeah. He kind of occupied like the Master Splinter kind of role from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, right? Which is ironic, right? Like Gerson is like if you made one of the Ninja Turtles the sensei instead of Splinter, right? Instead of I thought that was really cool. I think you might still end up getting what you want thematically, the idea of like ink and using that as creation, because darkness is very much being posited as grist for creation. It is raw materials for
exactly,
which I'll get into later. But basically, I think darkness is not something we're meant to fear per se, right? Maybe too much of it. Like we're meant to fear excess, but darkness itself is a welcomed thing. I think it's something we can use to create. So
tool of creation.
So I think you will probably end up getting what you want thematically, even if it wasn't necessarily Gerson doing it from within the narrative.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm excited for more of that.
Yeah, and I did read that comic. It was pretty cool.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I should probably link to your comics in the description of the video, which I will definitely do. But yeah, people should read LynxGriffin's comics, everybody. You should definitely read their comics. And
I'm working on a new one. I'm trying to color it. That'll be out.
Yeah.
I hope by the end of the month.
Yeah. You were telling me about that. Do you want to spoil it for the audience a bit, or do you want to keep that under wraps?
We can keep it mostly under wraps, but I will say this is probably like my first and only time delving into the weird route at all, because normally I'm not super big on the weird route, but after Chapter 5 stuff, I'm like, oh, I got thoughts on this.
Yeah.
Got to get out.
So. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Actually, now that we're kind of diving into the weird route.
We're diving.
Yeah. that was unintentional. That was not.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. Sorry, I completely lost my train of thought there. Yeah, so the weird route, I think, obviously, for something that was only like 20 minutes long, was some of the most impactful, like, moments in the entire game. It gave me
strong impression. And I've never played the weird route. Just watching it, I was already like, "Oh, this is uncomfortable." So I imagine it's way worse just to play too.
So this is the first time I actually decided to try and play it myself, and I regret it because the game does permanently mark your save file. Like, you go, oopsie. Now, I don't know if it's gonna be like an Undertale where it's like, haha, you're a dirty sinner, or it's gonna be more on a technical level so that the future chapters have something to reference when hooking into the game. But it does permanently mark your INI file. But the part where you have to hit proceed constantly in order to cross the lake, it felt immersive. I felt like my heart racing. Yeah. Like it's funny. It's funny to describe it that way because like my friend was like, "Why would you want to be immersed in something like that?" And I was like, "Oh, you know what I mean." It felt like you were part of the action, is what I'm saying. Which, for better or for worse, it just really gets you invested in that moment. I actually have. Do you have any like broader thoughts on the weird route or side B route as it is now?
Oh sheesh, I'm trying to think of what would be best to talk about in that sort of sense without delving too much into stuff. I do feel like definitely what's supposed to be happening at hand is that we are, breaking out of the bounds of the game. This is supposed to be like a game breaking sequence. You can abuse death mechanics to boundary break in that sense, and that's supposed to be what's happening for that. The parts that I always get kind of I get frustrated with are people that have taken that, this very strong scene, obviously left an impression on people, and taking this as like, oh, this is going to be required to do the real ending. We're going to have to do this in order to, figure out the true story and stuff. The knights from the weird root, blah blah blah, and I'm like, if this is supposed to be imitating, basically breaking a game, that's not what happens when you break a game. You don't get a secret true ending when you break a game. One of two things happens usually. Like, if you know what you're doing, you get to the regular ending faster. Like, if you're a speedrunner, you skip big chunks of the game and you get to the regular ending faster. If you don't know what you're doing, you just get a broken game. You don't get anything for it. The fun of it was breaking it in the first place. So I'm a little bit hesitant to say, oh, we're going to get some secret, super duper secret lore and you're going to have to do the weird root for that. I'm like, I think the weird root, if it's supposed to be a game breaking thing, then that is your reward, is breaking it. And two, I kind of wonder if maybe people are overestimating, like, oh, we're making Noelle stronger in this kind of sense. This probably is something I'm going to touch on in the comic too. And I feel like, one of the themes of Deltarune is that, it's empathy with fictional characters, that you are realizing, hey, fictional characters, are people in their own sense. That's what we've been trying to, teach with the Darkners and stuff like that. And to us, Noelle is a fictional character, even if to herself she's a real person. But I don't know, I get the feeling that, like, there's this setup where we believe that, oh, this is going to make Noelle stronger, but the truth is that by treating Noelle as basically a conduit, as an object for breaking the game, we haven't actually made her stronger. We've actually stunted her growth. And that the normal route, maybe just because I really want to see Noelle's, like, game-breaking abilities come into play in the normal route, I think that would be really fascinating for some in-game stuff. And I kind of want this comparison between normal route and weird route Noelle, where by treating her as a person in the normal route, we have she has actually become stronger than she would have been in the weird route, because in the weird route, like, even as she's like, tell me to grow wings and fly, I want to get out of this town, we are still the ones that have to tell her to do that. She is still depending on the player to do crazy things. I want to see a situation wherein she's like, I don't need the player. I can do this on my own. And I think that would be an interesting contrast.
Yeah, definitely. And she, this kind of dives into the whole, like, now there's that word again, but this kind of like goes into the idea of a twisted route, in the sense that in the aborted weird route, Noelle is a lot more assertive, right? If you try to make her go into the Ferris wheel, she's like, that's right, you can't tell me what to do, right? So I do wonder if in the normal route, if she'll eventually develop a healthier way of asserting herself that isn't just like, steamrolling things, you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. That I think that in the normal route, basically if you give her the chance to become her own person, like focus on the things that she wants, because she does want to do stuff. She wants to be with Susie. The whole bit about in the normal route of I don't want to run away anymore. Like, I don't think that's her giving into a set path. I do think that's actually her choosing that I can break free and I can live in my own way, and I don't have to hurt myself in order to do that anymore. So I think if you keep following that through and allow Noelle, again, basically to kind of discover her own strength on her own, that can lead to better places, basically, than just breaking the game for the sake of it and using her as, like, the conduit to do that.
Do you actually have any thoughts of the idea of a twisted route? Because I know you...
I'm a little iffy on that because I still don't think, basically, I don't think Toby is being untruthful when he says there's only one ending. And
Yeah.
I don't really know what would be gained by, like, I guess maybe it's the way people have presented it so far, and like, oh, we're gonna get the twisted sword and kill everybody, blah. Okay, to what end? To, like, I'm just not sure how this would really tie into anything else we're doing. I don't know what the twisted sword is for. I don't really have any ideas on that. But just a straightforward, like, and then we turn this into the killing our family game. I don't know what's gained from that. I don't know what we're supposed to learn from it, kind of thing. So I'm a little hesitant to be like, oh, there's actually a secret third route that's even more effed up than the weird route. And it's like, I think the weird route's already pretty effed up. We don't need another one. But I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong on that front. I just secret third twisted route feels a little outside of my thoughts right now. I don't know what the twisted sword, but I don't think it's like, and then there's another route, because I don't think Toby is being untruthful about there only being one ending.
Yeah, first of all, I agree that I don't think the weird route is a means to getting a super special secret ending, because I don't think a true ending or whatever will run through killing Birdley. Like, at no point do we have to murk the bird in order to get the true ending. As far as twisted route goes, I'm with you there. I'm also a little bit unsure of what to think of that. I definitely do think a twisted route exists. I don't know what ends. I don't know to what end, though. And
yeah,
I do think the proposals the fandom has made are actually really interesting. They are thought provoking. My gut feeling about the one ending thing is that whatever path you choose, the ending gets recontextualized, is the first way I can see it happening. The second way I can see it happening is Toby doing a thing where it's like, stories have endings, but normal people's lives don't necessarily have endings until they die, right? So
that's true.
Like, it could be that at some point the story ends, but the lives of the characters continue, right? So there's one ending.
The ending is basically the ending of our participation in the story.
Yes, and I brought up Princess Tutu in the last podcast, and I don't want to spoil it for you. If anyone wants to watch Princess Tutu, I'll put a.
You need to watch it.
I'll put a timestamp, or actually, I don't even know what time we're in right now, so never mind. But
we can do it later.
Yeah. In Princess Tutu, their Gaster equivalent, Mr. Drosselmeyer, invites a character from outside of the narrative in order to change the story from within. And so he invites Ahiru, or Duck, from who is a duck that lives in the lake outside the town. Does that sound familiar?
Yep.
And he observes from the great beyond, or the depths, or whatever you want to call it, and he observes how Duck Ahiru changes the story from within, much to his chagrin at times. And so in Princess Tutu, they come up against a lot of the same things that the characters in Deltarune come up against, and the story plays out. But at the end, by the end of it, there's this sort of, well, the story is over, but we got to keep living our lives. And so I can see that happening with Deltarune.
Yeah,
it's not
that can certainly happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you're going to have, like, okay, a character is coming in as an agent of change, that definitely seems like what Susie's doing here.
Definitely. Let me just mark that down here. I was just marking down the timestamp so I can give people a spoiler warning, or I can put it like up on the screen. Now, with regards to the content of the weird route itself, I know a lot of people fixate on the way it ends, right? The whole thing with the insert chapter 7B thing, which when I saw that, the first thing I did, I think, was DM Molly an out of context JPEG of a trophy. Yeah, like, um, but that was
Used to
fascinating.
be correct about the
Yes,
game.
yes, definitely. Um, Molly's got a big brain, and definitely, I think they were really onto something with the device theory. And I guess, chapter 5 just kind of totally proves it. Um, it, I understand why people are fixating on that. I also am very interested in seeing where that goes. But the part that interested me the most actually was Noelle's monologue about feeling as if she's watching her own life through glass. It's a very powerful monologue. I think a lot of people experience that kind of feeling, right? Either because you're trans or because you're depressed or you have something else going on in your life. Sometimes you end up depersonalizing that way, and you end up feeling like you don't belong in your own body for one reason or another, and you feel like you're not in control of your life. And I was like, man, this is really powerful writing. It also speaks to this sort of middle layer within the story, right? A lot of people talk about the meta narrative, but they often frame the meta narrative. When they talk about the meta narrative, they talk about the relationship between the player and the world of the game, which is fine. That's cool. That's a part of it. But here, she's explicitly bringing up how she, as a character, feels like she's losing agency due to other people in her life pulling her strings, right? So far, Chris has kind of had a monopoly on the idea of agency, right? The themes of agency in the game. That us, the player, we're controlling Chris, so Chris doesn't have any agency. Has been the conversation for most of this game's life. Now, Noelle is bringing another angle into it, which is lack of agency from people around her. Particularly Carol, who is very much the you got to get good grades and go to Harvard kind of mom. And so I saw that and I was like, man, this game's got layers. I really appreciate these layers. And if I may be so bold, I'm about to say something that is maybe potentially controversial. Maybe not. I don't know. I I think that scene kind of underscores a lot of the trans narrative in Deltarune. A lot of people that I know, a lot of trans folks, and me being non-binary, it it I have felt that way, right? You feel like you don't necessarily belong in your own body. You're watching from a third person perspective, and to me, her feeling like she's watching herself go through the motions feels so transcoded. On top of the fact that when you go, we'll talk about the Galse/Rouse stuff later, but on top of that, the whole king and queen theming, right? When you go to the king and queen voting booth, and one of the options leads to Noelle mentioning that Chris used to misspell her name as Noel with the male spelling, that raised an eyebrow. I was like, huh, why bring up the male spelling of her name if there isn't some gender stuff happening with Noelle as well? You know what I mean?
There's definitely, I think it's part of the broader narrative around not just gender binaries, but binaries of all kinds. I do feel like maybe I should make a video on this on like what I think are the themes of Deltarune. I think one of the major themes of Deltarune is that freedom is achieved through self-actualization, through becoming a full, complete person. And that's how a lot of like the transcoding with a lot of characters carries in. Basically, this is, a world, a universe where things are in binaries and roles. You are prince or princess, you are king or queen, human or monster, you're lightener or darkener, you are hero or villain. You have these set roles that have been placed upon you, and the roles will basically kill you. So the way to escape that is to become your own self-actualized person, to reject the binary, to be multiple things at once, to be nothing at once. And this can tie into the gender stuff with Chris, with trans Rouse, with Susie being mixed race, with all this stuff with Noelle, and her also wanting to, escape this world of binaries and roles that have been imposed upon you, and basically kind of create your own role, become your own person, is freedom from that narrative that you feel trapped in, that has been placed on you by your family, by your society, by the narrative, by the code of the game. Is just becoming a full person is the way out of that. And in comparison, the weird route is like the bad route out of that, because, okay, if you are trying to escape, the roles the narrative have placed upon you, your options are either, create your own role, become your own person, become multiple things at once, or effectively just reject all of it completely and kill yourself. Because, all that suicide stuff going on in the weird route, like, that's clearly there for a reason, just like this rejection of the world completely. And obviously that is considered the forbidden route for a reason. But yeah, I can definitely see all the stuff about escaping roles tying in with that, with Noelle, with these binaries that have been placed upon them, and basically the multitude of ways that those binaries can be broken. And the way to do that, in the good ending, is to become your own full, complete, complex person. And I think that's definitely where the trans narrative comes in.
Yeah, you're basically spitting fire. I completely agree with everything you're saying here. And if I may add on a bit to that, I've actually had a lot of thoughts about the idea of the other side of the lake. The big thing for me, I've been obsessing over just the phrase itself, the other side of the lake. And I think about that, and I think about how darkness is grist for creation. And I start to feel, maybe this is just me projecting, because I have had a lot of moments in my life where I've had to take leaps of faith. I played this chapter right as I was moving to a brand new city, right? Taking a leap of faith that, like, the community there would warmly receive me. I feel like the other side of the lake is an allegory for two things, right? The first one, it is an allegory, at least in the weird route, it's an allegory for the end of a story, like the last page of a book before the book closes. It is like it is a metaphor for not being able to leave the boundary of the page, right? And then in the normal route, I feel like the other side of the lake is a metaphor for a place where a story has not been written yet. Your story has not been written. In Hometown, everyone knows you. Everyone has expectations of you. Your life has been written in Hometown. But outside of Hometown, where no one knows you, where you'll finally have space to grow into yourself, that, the other side of the lake then represents a place where, even though there's nothing there for you to write, or rather, even though there's nothing there written, it is a place where you get to write something for yourself for the first time. You get to be in control of your life. Yeah, it's a possibility space, And I've been just obsessing over that, and I might make just a full video about that, because it's been gnawing at my soul. Like, it's just been chewing on me. Like, I've been thinking, man, should I make a theory video? I'm like, no, maybe I should just make a video. I don't know what you would call that kind of video, thematic analysis, or just like a emotional dump. Yeah.
I have feelings. I gotta get them out.
Yeah, exactly. It feels like that. And especially because I also watched Revolutionary Girl Utena. I don't know if you've ever, I think you mentioned you watched it, but you don't remember, like, the finer points. Yeah?
I watched it ages ago, like in college, which is like 20 years ago at this point. But it was, it definitely sticks with you. I don't remember all the details of it, but I should rewatch Utena. But yeah, I watched the full series and the movie. It's just been years and years and years since I've done so. But it's kind of like required viewing if you are in the queer community and like anime. you need to watch Utena.
And I would argue, on top of Princess Tutu, Utena is also now mandatory for, like, well, it's not that it helps you understand the plot or anything, but it acts as a framework to get your noggin jogging about the idea of like having the freedom to switch out your roles. And
definitely noticed that the Utena options for Susie in the dress up Susie section. I was hey, she's got the Utena hair.
Yeah, I wonder what that could mean, right? Now I wanted specifically in reference to like Beyond the Lake, I wanted to bring up the movie ending, which by the way, the movie and the show are AUs of each other, but they're in conversation with each other. So the manga, the show, and the movie all have like 3 different storylines that are all in conversation with each other. In the movie, towards the end, Anthe, who's kind of like the love interest for Utena, she helps. She's trying to get Utena to break out of this world because it turns out like the academy, which is kind of like their equivalent to hometown, is just like a giant theme park on a giant car that's driving on like a deserted highway. And
I can see also I think Knights of Guinevere probably pulled a lot of stuff from Utena on that, just the giant shining castle on this machinery that's driving it around.
Yeah, and so like this wasteland, it's all allegorical, right? For this idea of like adulthood being this big question mark, and yet that the freedom that comes with it is a possibility space. And so I think that's part of the reason why I started thinking about the other side of the lake as a possibility space as well, is from that particular scene in the Utena movie.
Interesting. Yeah, I could see that for sure.
So
I do need to rewatch the movie. Unfortunately, like there's all this really great allegorical stuff in it. There's so many layers to it, and then the thing you get stuck on is the part where she turns into a car.
Yeah. And like they asked the director,
like it's like it's more important than her getting turned into a car. There's other things going on, but like when you're a dumb teenager, you're like, she turns into a car.
Funniest shit I've ever heard. I think they asked the director.
Spoilers for that, by the way.
Yeah, spoilers for that, by the way. What is this? This is we're at 1 hour and 2 minutes. Now, I think they asked the director about like why she turns into a car, and I think he essentially just said, "Oh, it's cool."
Sometimes that's all there is to it. Sometimes it's like, well, it's cool. Like you kind of end up coming back to it later. Like sometimes you discover like, oh, there was like a thematic reason for it. But at the time when I did it, it's because it was cool. So you're just like, yeah, I did that on purpose, really. But it works, so you go with it.
Although maybe we shouldn't take the director at face value, because like he says a lot of things to mess with people. I don't know if you remember the character Miki. He's like the blue hair boy with the stopwatch.
Oh, barely.
I believe. Well, there's a character like that, and he's always like pressing his stopwatch, and like the camera always fixates on him doing that. And I think someone asked the director like, hey, what's up with the stopwatch? And he was like, it contains the secrets of the universe or whatever. And like, so he's clearly just messing with people, Mysterious
I'll
wins.
Do that when you make something. You can just mess with people.
Honestly, if you're a creator and people are like obsessed with your thing, you can and should just reply with mysterious wins whenever anyone like asks you anything about it. Like, oh, why did character XYZ do that thing? Mysterious wins.
Thank you all for all the great voice clips, Flowery. So
yeah, Toby just single-handedly destroying or improving everyone's soundboards on Discord. Like, I have not had a moment of peace in a Discord call in the last month because all we do is like spam all of his voice clips. Jerona,
I'm calling.
Which I think is a good time to segue into the Dark World itself. Yeah. How did you feel upon seeing Studio Kara, which, very funny, Toby, commissioning Studio Kara, the Gainax people, and also a studio with that freaking name, to do Flowery's in entrance. How did you feel about that?
It just totally took me by surprise. I was not expecting this at all. Like, it just came up and I'm like, what? Anime?
Yeah, and then Asgore.
Anime? Was yelling this, and so when I replayed the chapter with my friends, I usually do a stream where like I invite like 3 or 5 friends over or something like that, and I play the chapter with them, and that's their experience with it. I was really excited. I'm like, oh, I can't wait until we get to the flowery introduction. I want to see how they react. And of course, they freaked out too. So I'm like, yes. It was so weird, but good.
Oh my god! You know, I wish I had fully recorded my reaction, like my audio reaction, because the first thing that came out of my mouth when when I saw Flowery and Asgore was Twinks. He's into Twinks. Like, that was like the first thing that flew out of my mouth. And it just then and then Asgore, you know, mentions, "Oh yeah, I saw you walking on that like
city streets." Like what?
City streets. I was like, what? What?
Asgore saw the anime too?
Yeah.
Where is the anime? There it is.
What do you mean it's diegetic? Like, I was immediately floored by Flowery. I loved the hell out of that
I
guy.
was so baffled, but it was so funny. I'm like, I don't like this guy, but he compels me so. I can't turn off the voice clips. I have to hear more. I think it was also just kind of a bit of a shock of like, oh, by the way, here's another human character. Because we have gone so long with like no other human characters aside from Chris. And even in, you know, Undertale, basically got Frisk and Kara and that's it. So I was a little bit blindsided. It's like, oh, and here's all the other humans. This is it. Like, obviously they're not humans, but just getting to see other characters that look human kind of threw me for a loop at first, but it was very fun once we got into it more. I think I did this in a fan art once, but I kind of like the fact that like even though all the flowers are human, they all kind of look like they're drawn in different art styles. They're not really consistent across that. Like Flower is obviously anime twink. Green kind of looks like a Kathy cartoon, and yellow is a little bit, you know, kind of doofy kind of thing. Blue's kind of more Steven Universe looking character, and I thought that was really neat, actually.
I thought Yellow's like relative. I loved Yellow's design because like he looked. I don't want to say amateurish. That's not. Like his sprite is a lot less detailed than everyone else's, but it's no less expressive, right? But it's very clearly drawn to look a lot more rudimentary than the other sprites, I would say. Green kind of looked like a Splendid Land design.
Interesting.
At least to me. Which, you know, Splendid Land has worked a little bit on Deltarune. I think the pronoun is it she or they? Well, Splendid Land. I think she hey, Splendid Land, if you're watching this for whatever reason, I'm sorry if I get your pronouns wrong. She she did the design for the hacker, like the arrow guy. Yeah. So
I can see the resemblance between the hacker and Green. Then I can see it. Interesting.
I don't know if she worked on Green's design. It just feels inspired by. Is all I'm saying. But yeah, Green is adorable. I love Green. Green is extremely expressive for a character who never talks.
Yeah, and who doesn't like change their face that much. You can still get that much across. I think Orange was my favorite flower, but Green is my second favorite.
Orange is adorable.
Together, we're so cute.
We'll get to Orange in a bit.
Oh yeah.
I think my first impression, like broadly, like when we entered the Dark World, the way it's presented to us with like the trees, the trees becoming sakura trees, and like the music kicking in was so like grandiose. I just love the hell out of that. And then like
so fascinating, just like that first third of the Dark World is pretty much like we're gonna make you feel like it's chapter 1 again. Like that down to like, you know, the layouts, the way the trees are done, even if they're secure petals, you know, the music being the Insane in the Rain remix and stuff like that. Just very, very fast. And putting a hat back on Ralsei. Oh, you wanted his hat back? Here it is. And a lot of similar like spike puzzles and stuff like that. Very interesting that like we're calling back to chapter 1 specifically. But only for that first third of the Dark World.
Yeah, for the first third, but also like Toby kind of calling out the fandom for thinking Ralsei would never get character development, right? There's like that worm character early on who like he developed, and you know, there was a lot of discussion among fans. Like, when's Rousey getting his development? Well,
here it is.
Here it is.
He's really mad at Twink. And
he's really, really. I loved Rousey temporarily becoming, American Kirby box art this entire chapter, right? Like, Rousey is
shut up in college.
Yeah. Rousey's little. I gotta talk about the scene where, just that, like the scene where like, Flowery tells you about voice clips.
Yeah.
And how like if you had shut off Flowery's voice clips, Susie's like, hey, what happened to Flowery's voice clips? And then Rousey's like, right, Chris disabled it in the menu. Like they're so petty. They're very no. It's a very no expression if you know about a Deltarune rivet.
Oh, I know a little bit of it. I haven't actually played it. When I first played, I turned off Rousey's because I was really curious what would happen. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna. I like the voice clips. I don't want to turn those off, but they keep talking about turning something off. Okay, Rouse, I'm gonna try and turn off Rousey, see what happens. And then he's like, and I went, okay, I gotta turn them back on. Wait, where's the option? Oh no, what did I do?
Yeah. Rousey's like, like
he's so mad.
It's like watching a streamer. You know what? Rousey was acting like those streamers back in the Undertale days who like was acting like the audience of like streamers who were playing Undertale, quote unquote, the wrong way, right? Going, except they could talk, and that was the problem. Like,
we turn off voice clips for the audience.
Yeah. I think a gag that just absolutely floored me was like, right before Rousey guides you through the spikes, if you attempt the puzzle one more time, Rousey will like desperately run towards the puzzle and then like beef it, and that like killed me. It's just like, Rousey, no.
Also, just that whole follow-up where Rousey's like, oh, I have to explain the menus to Susie now. Get ready for this lore drop, Susie. No, I already know it.
Yeah, she says, Flowery told me, and that became a meme. That's like the new, Chris, where the hell are we kind of meme, right, I would say. And actually that dives into my next point. When I played Chapter 5, I had this impression that it was kind of a self-parody. Like, there was this feeling of Toby looking at the camera and winking at us, essentially, being like, hey, I'm parodying myself. And at first I was like, where is Toby going with this? Why is he self-parodying? Like, you see, like, all these enemies with the description of, like, oh, they look so sparable. And, the lore dump about the menu that you can see and all the other stuff that happens in this chapter. And then, of course, that all culminates in the chapter beating you over the head with, this is not Undertale, right? That was the point of all that self-parody, right? The point was like, hey, you got to stop treating this like Undertale right now, if you haven't already. Yeah.
Basically, like, this is, obviously this is a parallel story to Undertale, but we're not doing this one for one. This is not just Undertale again. This is something else. So let's try and expand out from what we already know.
Yeah. And I don't know. I thought that self-parody angle was really interesting.
It was.
It just stood out to me pretty much immediately how it felt like it was really tongue-in-cheek the entire time. And then we actually get to or rather, it's really tongue-in-cheek like the first third of the chapter. And then we get to the meat and potatoes, which is the platforming segment. Man.
So fun.
So fun. We talked about that earlier, but man, I hope someday, Toby decides he wants to make a platformer, because man, that was a beautiful, beautiful experience. It was like playing a combination of Sonic Advance and Smash Brothers almost. Yeah.
Smash stuff in there. And yes, a little bit of the Toho too, since we had, fighting the bullets that are doing bullet patterns in real time. So.
Yeah, it's funny. Everyone assumed that the guest pattern maker was going to be Zune, who made Toho, but it was actually one of the developers for Zero Ranger, I think is the name of the game.
Fascinating.
Yeah, yeah. They were the I can't pronounce their name because I actually don't remember the spelling of it, but uh, it's in the credits. They made Zero Ranger, um,
So did
and
they do the bullet patterns for the platforming parts?
that I'm not sure. It's unclear, like who did what in the credit. You know, it's unclear who did what, but they are definitely credited as a guest pattern maker.
Okay.
Yeah. Um, and I guess the next part I want to talk about though is just like Flowery's Flowery is like my favorite kind of villain, quote unquote, which is they're not quite evil and they have like a more nuanced relationship with the protagonists, right? They're not there to like be evil per se, but it's clear that Flowery was trying to goad the cast into like growing, especially Rouse,
Oh yeah,
right?
sure.
He,
It felt very different from what we got from like, King or Queen or Tenna or all that kind of stuff. Like this it was a nice, like, he was still, ridiculously funny, but it was just a nice change in terms of like, oh, like he is terribly obnoxious, but you also completely understand like his motivations and stuff like that, and you really can't fault him for that. And him pushing Rouse to basically be like, hey, maybe you should try and change yourself in order to change things too. Hint, hint, wink, wink. Like that, very
yeah,
interesting.
yeah. Something that came up like post chapter 4 with some of the folks that I was talking to about the game at the time is they were really hoping that Rouse would also have his kind of like his sensei interaction, just like how Susie got to, be mentored by Gerson. Um, and people I knew assumed it would be Asgore doing it, which makes sense, right? It would have been like a pseudo father child moment, I guess. But Flowery occupying that role was a really good twist. I think Flowery then busting out the, by the way, when are you starting HRT to Rouse was just like beautiful, like like I was like, man, Toby just went for it. Gal say real.
I'll say real.
Yeah.
Before all that happened, I was kind of neutral about that kind of thing. Like I had heard, all the case for Rouse being trans. I'm like, oh, that'd be really neat. Like that'd be a cool thing. But I don't know if we'll be able to actually go that route in the game, kind of thing. And now it's like we get to chapter 5, and it's like, oh, actually, I think he's gonna do it. I think he's gonna go that route, kind of thing. I think we're gonna do the brave thing, which is
Yeah.
also kind of what got me on, oh, I think we're going to do Cruziel for Endgame, because I don't know, just in terms of usually, Toby is definitely a part of fandoms the way we have, is kind of grown up in that kind of thing, and it's been a part of. I know this is kind of, we'll definitely get back to trans, I'll say, but slight detour, but it's definitely been a part of fandoms where, like, in the adventure game, fantasy game, or story or whatever, you have like a love triangle that gets resolved one way or another, and one person gets left out of it, kind of thing. That's always what happens. And then in the fandom, they're like, well, that's silly. They should be a threesome instead. And I kind of want to see. I think, honestly, think based on what we have so far, that Toby's going to be like, you know what, the fandom is correct. That's like, screw love triangles. A threesome will solve this, and I'll just make it canon. And part of the reason why I'm like, oh, I think he might actually do it. I think he might do that. The brave thing was trans Rouse, because before I was like, oh, that would be really cool, but I don't know if we'll do it. And now after chapter 5, I'm like, oh, I think we're gonna do it. So we might as well go whole hog and break all the boundaries, break all the binaries, and do the cool thing. So that got me totally on board with trans Rouse.
Yeah, I was the same way. I was pretty indifferent to the idea. Although I was a little bit more bullish on polyamory. Um, and now I'm especially bullish on it now.
I'm way more bullish on it now. Before I was like, oh, that'd be cool, but they probably won't. Now I'm like, no, I think it's in game. I think Suzel's definitely going to stay canon, but I think the threesome is actually where we'll end up by the end, which would be extremely cool.
Yeah, and it like I am a little bit concerned about how he's gonna, if he does go for the polyamory thing, how he's gonna pull it off, because I know sometimes, just speaking as somebody who was also polyamorous, I there's this thing that I've seen other writers do where they use polyamory as like a get out of jail free card, so to speak, with characters. Now, I trust Toby, especially now how like sensitively he's been handling a lot of really hard hitting topics. So like I can totally see him very deftly handling polyamory. Um, so I'm looking forward to seeing more developments in that direction. As for trans Rouse, it's funny. Like there was someone who collected a bunch of YouTuber reactions to trans Rouse, and the reaction almost universally was like, "Whoa, Galse real!" And um, you know, I have a few friends who kind of they have some reservations about it, mostly because they uh, are kind of non-binary or some other gender non-conforming, and they were kind of hoping to see themselves in Rouse, um, which I get it, but also it, I get it, but it's also like nothing is set in yeah, nothing is set in
I
stone yet.
understand that, like, that sense of, like, wanting some rep, like, as somebody who's
Hmm.
Arrow Ace, I'm kind of
Hmm.
like, oh, okay, no Arrow Ace, Chris, alright, that'd be nice, but, you can't rep everybody and have, a decent story. It kind of gets
Yeah,
loaded and yucky if you try that, so
right.
I do understand that sentiment of, I wish it were for me.
But also, like, you can be trans femme and non-binary at the same time, which I think is still in the cards for Rouse.
That's true.
I think, like, Rouse could either go like becoming a girl, all like I think Rouse could potentially just become a girl, or Rouse could become trans femme non-binary. I and so I
End of that anyway with
mhm.
the slight little pronoun change after, towards the end of the game, so.
Yeah. I was gonna bring that up. I wasn't sure what pronouns to use for Rouse ever since Chapter 5 dropped, because of like that one pronoun shift from he, him to they, them. Yeah. Speaking on that though, um, something that stands out to something that stands out to me about Rouse transitioning is also, or Rouse potentially uh, being trans. Rouse almost feels like a persona that's breaking away from their like creator. If that makes any sense, I don't know if this is a very furry thing, but like um, sometimes you make a persona as like an avatar for yourself, right? And then over time, your feelings develop in a different direction, and it feels like the character is telling you, hey, I want to be something else. I don't want to be just your shadow or your stand-in anymore. And something about Rouse kind of feels adjacent to that. There's all the jokes about Chris, of Rouse being Chris's persona, which I'm, by the way, still 100% on. Uh, at least,
I think there's some element of Chris that's like in Rouse contributed to Rouse's creation. Those connections have to be there for a reason. The mechanics of how that works, that feels very up in the air from past comics where I was just like, oh, Chris' soul's in Rouse, but there's definitely some element there of Chris and Rouse, just in terms of like, okay, here is somebody who's a part of the Dreamer family that's around Chris's age, that looks like Azrael but is not Azrael, that has the differences there, and I don't know how that's going to get resolved in the end, but I do find it really deeply interesting in terms of like if Rouse is something that was kind of created from Chris's own desires, and big part of Rousse's arc is be like, I have my own desires. I want to be my own person. I don't want to just do what Chris wants from me. Flowery being like, hey, ignore what Chris wants, take the pink and blue drink kind of thing. So that's just, I think that'd be a really cool direction for Rousey to go in as part of the trans narrative again. Even if he was supposed to be kind of this wish fulfillment or other aspect of Chris that they kind of wish they had, that he's, because he is his own person and is only becoming his own person more so, that we'll see how he develops in whatever direction that is he develops. Whether that's just, fully transitioning or just femme presenting, non-binary, or however it goes.
It's funny because that scene also like made me go, huh, I don't think I care what object Rousey is anymore. Like
that's become so muddy. Like I feel like that's one of those things where I'm like, okay, that's even less clear now. Will we ever know? I don't know.
Rousey's becoming Rousey becoming like such a fully fleshed character made me stop thinking about the fact that they're an object. Like I'm, I don't what am I trying to say? I don't like have any real convictions on what object Rousey is. I kind of subscribe to the idea of headband asterisk, which is
that's been my assumption for a while, was headband asterisk, basically not just
there's like secret sauce,
Chris's soul, but for the secret sauce, but maybe it's something else. But it very well could be, something other than the headband as well. It's so hard to say, just because it's like, okay, he, appears independently wherever he wants. We don't need to have Chris present for that. So he's clearly not something that Chris is carrying on their person. It's something that can and does move around in the world. And, maybe that's just a concept, but that's still not clear than, what kind of concept that would be. So I can still see the headband situation, but it would have to be headband asterisk.
Yeah. And that's my feeling on a lot of things, right? Like, who's the knight? It's Des asterisk. It's that kind of thing. My opinion has always been, well, it's Des, but if it isn't Des, it's still a Des-related entity, like an evil clone from the future, or like a projection, or whatever. But
something like that.
Right now the major hotness with regards to what Rousey is, post chapter 5, is the idea that Rousey is a tree of some sort, with roots
floating around.
Which, that's cool. I could see it. I could see a situation where, Chris buried the headband like in the ground at some point, and that became like a dark tree somehow. I don't have like any strong opinions on that.
Yeah, I'm like, oh, okay, if he's like a tree roots or something like that, then okay, but then I still want to know, okay, he clearly has some relation to Chris and the Dreamers. He looks like a Dreamer. He's an anagram of Azrael's name, etc., etc. Whatever he is, that part has to mean something.
Yeah, I mean, he could also...
You're going to say that, like, oh, he's tree roots. Then okay, maybe he's tree roots, but how does that relate to his relationship with Chris and the Dreamer family?
Yeah, Rousey could also just be like a Voltron of like different things. Like he could be like the headband plus like Chris's broken dreams of like fitting in with their family, and so he's got like he's like a shadow crystal Gajinka or something. Like I don't know. It just like a shadow crystal Gajinka. I kind of...
I think I might prefer that to Baby Titan, honestly.
Baby Titan. Yeah, Baby Titans are Gajinkas, right? They're broken dream Gajinkas. Like, it just... I'm still kind of iffy on the idea of Rousey just being nothing. I think that's a little...
That seems like a bit of a cop-out.
Yeah.
He clearly said, I'm just... He was going to say something before Susie interrupted him. Thank you, Susie. But... So he's not just nothing. He's clearly a thing, something. It's just unclear what that thing is, what the context is in relation to Chris and stuff like that, and how that would manifest in the future. I do find it interesting that in this chapter, Flowery's like, "Oh, you're an impossibility." Like, what does that mean, Flowery? What does that mean?
That's a huge hint, right? Like Rousey's like this 1 in a million kind of event, right? You know, um, it. Yeah, I have no idea what that could possibly mean.
I don't know either.
I don't know.
I know that he's probably trans more than we know what objects he is.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's funny you bring up Susie interrupting Rousey when Rousey is gonna tell us what they were. Because like Susie is so load bearing in this game, right? Like her I guess not aloofness. What's the word for it? I don't want to call her stupid. She's definitely not stupid. She's actually very emotionally smart. That we've seen that time and again. She's actually really good at picking up on people's feelings. Um, but her obliviousness is very load bearing in this game, right? Like it carries the plot forward. And now though,
Basically, like, she doesn't get caught up in the lore. She's like, I don't care about that. I didn't play the first game.
yeah, exactly. I feel like Susie though, she's no longer oblivious. Like the way she reacted to the fountain opening in the flower shop to me felt like Susie putting two and two together, but not wanting to admit to herself that Chris is the one opening fountains because Chris is like their very first bestie, right? Like you wouldn't want to, you wouldn't want to feel like your bestie is the villain in your life, right?
Yeah, I definitely think, I don't think she's stupid and like, oh, she's oblivious to what Chris is doing. I don't think she is. I think she suspects that something is going on with Chris, that they might be doing something really wrong. And that, yeah, she just does not want to entertain where that train of thought goes because she is just so desperate for having to have, like, real friends. Finally. She is she's hanging on to that by the skin of her teeth. She does not want to let that go, so she will not entertain the thought of, like, well, what would it mean if Chris is, doing something really bad and is going to betray me, kind of thing. I'm going to lose this friendship that is so important for me, so I can't deal with that. So I don't like it. Whenever we get to Chris's betrayal, I don't think she's going to be shocked, but she's going to be deeply upset. I don't think it's going to come as a surprise to her, but she does not want to follow that through because, like, she doesn't want to lose what she has.
Yeah, I can definitely see her saying, I didn't want to admit it, or her saying something like, I didn't want it to be true, but I want to know. And then, like, I can imagine her giving Chris a moment to explain and Chris not saying anything, which goes back to the quiet people pisses me off thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I feel like any character who develops from bully to friend, it's typically pretty good writing to later have them revert to that for a bit uh, before they truly get away from that, kind of like a temporary reversion to that old behavior. Because when you think about
falling back on the defense mechanisms that have,
yeah,
basically kept her safe in the past.
Yeah, people behave specific ways repeatedly because that is what worked for them in the past, right? So she gets confronted with this new situation she doesn't know how to deal with, which is a friend betraying her. She goes back to that sort of bully or be bullied mentality that she used to have, right?
Basically, like, shutting herself off from other people and being like, leave me the hell alone, don't interact with me, kind of thing. And if you
Yes.
try, I'll scare you away.
Yes, exactly. And I do want to ask if there were any specific moments in this chapter that made you like something that hit you like a ton of bricks, like anything.
I'll hit like a ton of bricks.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Trying to think. I mean, I feel like there's probably like so many moments that it's hard to like pin down one specifically, and I do need to replay a bunch of things just to try and mull stuff over in my head through it. But definitely like the scene at the lake where Noelle is like, I don't want to run away anymore, but her build up to that is like, I was thinking of leaving. The implication there is that she wants to hurt herself until she actually and then Susie doesn't want her to do that. Well, basically like prevents her from doing that. That kind of like, oh, that's an aspect of Noelle's character that's, really come to the surface and stuff like that. Um, Again, Noelle or Rousey being called an impossibility by Flowery was kind of like, huh, where did that come from, sort of thing. I guess I wasn't expecting Chris to make the Dark World for this chapter, so I was a little bit like, at the start of the Flower King where we see them, taking the soul out and preparing to do it, and then they just run back and do it anyway. I kind of thought it would just be the Knight doing it, but they ended up doing it, so that was like, oh wow, okay, they went ahead and did this one. That shocked me quite a bit. What else? Again, Flowery's entrance, shocking for maybe not like ton of bricks reasons, but just kind of like it hits you in the face with that sort of thing. Let's see what else. So certainly, the end of the chapter with obviously, the end of the chapter where Susie, goes to the closet and is like, thanks for walking me home, and Chris is left outside by themselves, is like, oh
Yeah, that shit was so sad. Especially if you get the balloon ending. Like if you
I didn't do the balloon ending. I actually walked her home, but
yeah, I did too. But like I feel like when you refuse to walk her home, right? Like Chris rips the soul out, puts it in a balloon, and there's something about Chris holding that balloon as Susie is closing the door that makes that whole scene way sadder, right? Like it's just like it I don't know what about it just makes it super sad. It
I think a lot of people are kind of reading that scene wrong a little bit in terms of like, oh, Susie is losing herself in fantasy. She's gonna have to, grow up and stuff. And I'm like, that's not what's going on. Clearly, the tragic thing here is one that Susie does not feel safe at home, and she feels safe in the fantasy kingdom. She's not lost in escapism. She's like, okay, I need to go someplace where I'm loved and safe. But at the same time, it's like, okay, we see this, these nice scenes of, Susie and Rousey and everybody in Castletown preparing for Noelle, building her own room. She's tucked into bed, and Rousey brings her some cake, and then Chris is just left outside by themselves. And the worst part is like that is their choice. They could make themselves a part of this, of this kind of trying to be optimistic in the face of terrible things happening that Susie is really trying with. I'm gonna change things. I'm gonna bring in Noelle. We're gonna fix this problem. And Chris is doing this to themselves and will not, whatever their promise was, won't let them basically become a part of this more optimistic thing that Susie is trying. And that just kind of breaks your heart.
yeah, and an interesting angle that I saw from a piece of fan art. I wish I could find the link. Is the reason why Chris was reacting the way they did in that final scene is because they felt like the cycle that happened with Des is like starting again. So like I saw fan art.
What happened with Des in that sense? Like what happened with how she vanished, or how Chris is responsible for that?
Well, we know that she willingly left home, right? According to the weird route. But there was a piece of fan art that had Chris looking at Susie as she like closed the door and she was saying, "Thanks for walking me home." And there was like a parallel where they drew Des closing the shelter door and also saying, "Thanks for walking me home, Chris." And that angle of like Chris seeing history repeating itself was really fascinating to me. I thought about it for a second. I was like, you know what? I could totally see this. And in fact, I feel like maybe that's where the plot is going, because for all the talk about time loops in the fandom, which I understand why people are coming to that conclusion, it makes logical sense when you think about Chris's Dark World save in the first chapter. But something that comes up a lot in the narrative, at least something that I've been trying to intuit, or rather something I can feel that I can't put into words per se, is this idea of generational cycles.
Mm-hmm.
This idea of becoming like people who were there before you, right? You have chapter 4 with the whole ancestors and descendants dynamic with the Darkners. You have, Noelle looking like Carol during the weird route with her facial expressions, and in the normal route, she looks more like Rudy. Um, we see that Susie, in a lot of ways, is being paralleled with Des. With
Seem like foils of each other. Yeah.
Yeah, within the story. And then you have the egg room in chapter 3 where it has like Game Boy graphics. And so they're like, oh, this is how the world used to look. And to me, that feels like rather than a time loop, we're doing generational cycles in multiple ways. We're doing it first in terms of story drafts, like, Gaster or whoever the demiurge in this world is drafting the story again and again and again, and they can't stop drafting it. Or like, and then in the light world with the characters, there's definitely this undercurrent of becoming like their parents, which is a very common thing in coming of age media. So I look at these two things and everything else, and I can sort of feel like this idea of cycles being a thing. And so Chris seeing Susie go into the shelter, I can totally see them being upset because it reminds them of something that may have happened to Des in the past with the shelter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I definitely think that there is something about, like, well, this is again like I think one of the major themes of Deltarune is this idea of basically salvation through adaptation. That you are in the cycle of retelling stories, but this is not necessarily a bad thing. It's not like a time loop where we're just doing things over and over. You are supposed to basically take the story that came before and write a new one, create your own, take what was good about it and bring that forward into your new adaptation. And I see that, yeah, this idea of cycles, the water cycle, using ink, and the engine of creation has to cycle through things. That basically, instead of Gaster creating Deltarune from scratch, that I kind of like the idea that Deltarune is an adaptation of something that happened previously, adapted specifically into this medium of video games so that we can be a participant in it, because that's a big element of change. But this story has happened previously, whether it was, a really long time ago, whether it was really recently with involving Chris and Des and stuff like that. And basically, how can you adapt this and retell this in a way that changes things? And that again ties back into escaping the roles that are assigned on you. If this previous story had, like, we had these roles, if you change that and create your own roles by becoming a complete person, then that assists you in retelling the story in a way where, maybe we can avert tragedy or turn tragedy into something else, kind of thing. So I'm definitely on board with the idea of, like, this is a cyclical thing, and the cycle is not necessarily bad in of itself. It's just you have to take responsibility basically for the adaptation and change it in a way that is sincere and done with care, and lets you create the world, your own roles that serve you, basically, that let you become a full person and expand beyond what the cycle has done previously. So, whole lot of thoughts on that.
Sorry, sorry, I had a microphone error.
Oh.
What time is it? No, you made total sense. My microphone's mute button was like being really stubborn for some reason. I was trying to unmute. Yes, to respond to what you're saying though. First of all, yes, you're making a lot of sense. You tend to make a lot of sense, actually. I think I think I told you, like, the first time I met you, I was like, if I were to ever bet against you, I would like lose everything. I think, yeah, I think I would never bet against you in terms of Deltarune theories, because your batting average is like insanely high right now. Um, so um, it you're right in that sense, and it also touches on this thing that I've been thinking about, which is any Deltarune theory, I think, also has to account not just for the player character relationship, but it has to account for how the characters interact, how the world of the characters is interacting with them and their struggles. And what I mean by that is, you think about the time loop theory again, right? That is a player to character kind of thing, right? From our perspective, there's no time loop because we're like watching from above, from a vantage point. But then you think about it in terms of, but then when you switch from time loop to a story loop or a generational loop, then that accounts for the middle layer, right? How the characters are being affected by like the things around them, as opposed to magical gas or stuff. I don't know if that makes any sense. That's something that I probably need to develop more deeply, but like it's just, they're just kind of rough thoughts I've been having about that.
It's like the layer, the meta narrative layer of us participating in with this as a video game, with us interacting with preset code and all of that is an aspect of it, but to the characters, the actual important aspect is like the social stuff with their families, living in a small town, all the stuff around gender and race and etc. that they are dealing with, as people basically, and not just as game characters.
Yeah, and uh, actually, I think uh, you talking about like iterating on stories kind of touches on your feelings on Friend that we briefly discussed. This is something I was looking very forward to bringing up at some point. So you mentioned some really interesting thoughts on like what Friend is and like how it relates to like the fandom and the story. So could you talk about that a bit? I loved hearing what you had already.
All right, I'll do my best. Basically, yeah, working off that idea of like, okay, if one of the themes of Deltarune is that adaptation is what will save you, that stories are something that you need to keep telling over and over again in your own way, that this, and this cycle of stories is good, then what does that mean to be a knockoff? What does it mean to basically take a story that's, popular and big and hype and copy it without really understanding what makes it special, without really adding any of your own stuff to it, just basically a shallow copy of a story. And because we have this kind of floating idea around about knockoffs that has shown up here and there, kind of on the fringes of the story. And I kind of think this is how Friend can feature in, especially with the most recent lore we got. Like, when all that dropped, I was like, wow, it's so weird for Toby to drop all that immediately, or not immediately, but like two weeks after the actual game came out, and especially after people were like, "Oh, Friend didn't do anything. What's Friend doing? They just show up and fight you, blah blah blah." And then we got all this stuff with, "Oh, the Friend pack is chasing after you, blah blah blah." Like, and people kind of went wild for that. I was kind of more interested in the fandom reaction than the actual dialogue we got. And thinking on it, I'm like, okay, how is this Friend stuff described? This is a pack of cats, led by somebody who, they're not bright, but they will find protein, aka something of substance, and then just pursue it until they get bored. Like, not like they will, if they find you, they will bite hard, but they don't stop when they catch and kill you. They stop when they get bored. And I'm like, these are trend chasers. They are going after the big shiny, the something with substance, until the next big thing of substance comes around, and then it's a switch to that. And I was thinking about in the context of like, Friend is associated with cat petters, which Noelle describes as a knockoff of Dragon Blazers, which is one of the adaptations of Lord of the Rings, Lord of the Hammer, which is an adaptation of the Prophecy. In that kind of sense, Chris uses the knockoff controller in order to access the sword mini game. It's kind of implied that like when Tenna copied the Mantle game, it was a bit of a knockoff sort of stuff. This running idea of, in a world again where it's really important to keep telling stories over and over, what harm does a knockoff do? That basically you have taken something of substance and copied it just for clout or fame or something, and that maybe that actually does real harm to this process of storytelling. And maybe that is how Friend Friend and the Friends feature in, that they are these trend chasers looking for substance, and then once they grab onto something, it's damaged in a way because you've had this knockoff associated. Heck, you can even tie that in with Spamton. He becomes a knockoff of Swatch. Like, he kind of tries to copy Swatch and does a poor job of it and stuff, and this kind of ruins him. When, like, he had a decently good thing with Tenna going, and he left that behind for whatever this big secret, big shiny thing is, something of substance, and then it turned out to be nothing and made him into a knockoff. So I'm interested in terms of, like, okay, like, Friend is this weird extra bit of lore. People are like, oh, it's the big bad and stuff like that. But in I think it could be really interesting if, in the context of retelling stories, the harm the knockoff does, the trend chasing does. When that's also definitely a problem with the fandom is focusing too hard on the details. Like, we even get that, like, even in the ARG stuff, if you follow the same path everybody goes, you won't get anywhere. You were looking so hard at the ground, you didn't see where you were going. You have to look at the big picture and basically approach the story with sincerity, not with hype moments and aura, or you're gonna get bit, kind of thing.
Yeah, those are deeply fascinating thoughts. Especially making that connection back to cat petters. I hadn't really thought of that story from that angle, but once you brought it up in our chat before, I actually started thinking as well as friend as a metaphor for fandom broadly. This idea of, like, because the word protein sounds very clinical, right? It sounds very sterile. And I know it's supposed to be like in reference to the eggs, but
Yeah.
this idea of, like, they're chasing protein, right, feels like you can extrapolate that as like a fandom chasing little nuggets of lore, right? Being
thing that came to mind when I first saw that stuff was, like, I almost drew a comic about it of, like, hey, you are the Cats fandom, you are the ones chasing a nugget of lore and whining and yelling when you didn't get the lore you wanted in chapter 5. So Toby's like, all right, here you go, and they immediately jump on it, and that's all the memes and all the stuff.
Yeah, well, I do think Toby always intended to patch this in, because I believe the game's code already, and yeah, someone has already
That's what I heard.
done a deep dive, let me know, but I believe the game's code was already referencing something there, but it was left blank intentionally. So I think Toby just wanted to steer the conversation a bit. He wanted the fandom to sort of meditate and dwell on the base game first, and then give us our dessert, so to speak, afterwards. Because
vegetables first, then you can have.
Yeah. As Ponnet said, right, on Blue Sky. I was talking to you earlier backstage about how backstage, but before the recording. But it I was talking about how, like, younger fans will tend to latch on to things, or like think of things much differently than someone who's our age, closer to Toby Fox's age. And, like, I remember building up to chapter 5, all I heard was friend, 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 friend. And that's fine. I get it, right? Friend is interesting. But I think friend is also made with, like, lore brain in mind, right? Like, people who are, and I'm not saying I'm not quote unquote lore brain, but, like, there's a very
Do it too.
but, like, I think it's important to take a step back and sort of remember there's a story being told here, right?
Important thing.
Yeah. And so hearing the younger fans especially talk about friend so obsessively as if it's the most important thing. And again, I do think friend is important. I am not saying that friend isn't important. However, I do think obsessing over this little cat is going to make people lose the forest for the trees, kind of thing, And so
exactly. Again, you're looking too close to the ground. You can't see where you're going. I also think it's interesting that, like, in terms of, like, the friends kind of being associated with fandom, and supposedly the mics are hurting cats for their mini games. Like we have to feed all these cats, when the mics are, kind of a little bit of a metaphor for
Yes.
certain theorizing in the fandom.
Yeah, let's
Kind
get
of
into that.
gentle poking fun at that. So we've tied the fandom
Yeah.
back into this kind
Yeah.
of theory brain stuff.
Yeah, and you mentioned some really interesting thoughts on the friend stuff, and I actually would like to hear you talk about it now that you've brought it up.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that the mics are supposed to be a bit of a nod to the theory brain fandom stuff. They kind of reference popular theories before chapters 3 and 4, but also something that keeps showing up with the mics is cats. Pluey cat thing. Almost all the mini games use cats of some kind. You go back in the mic room now in chapter 5, and you have Kiki's little park there, little reference from Toby. But if the friends are supposed to be some kind of, commentary on the fandom, always, trend chasing, looking for substance, and biting down hard and shaking it and all that kind of stuff, and putting out a ton of big output of, fan art and theories and talk about it, and then moving on to the next thing. And that's kind of a little bit facilitated or perhaps encouraged by also the theory brain situation with the mics. I don't know. It all feels kind of like this subtle. I feel like it's kind of dancing around the line that Caliborn is in Homestuck, in terms of like a commentary on fandoms, not necessarily doing things the right way. But I feel like that's a little bit dangerous territory. If I had my way, I'd be like, Toby, let's lay off the mics a little bit. That's a little bit risky. But I can also see that kind of desire to like kind of commentate on what the fandom focuses on, which is, all these little lore drops and weird things and Mike and all that stuff, when it's like, hey, you are probably looking like this is going to matter to some degree, but you're probably focusing on the wrong thing. Or if you are focusing on this thing, you're focusing on it kind of for the wrong reason.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And I think I mentioned before that, again, backstage, that a lot of folks, they kind of felt like they were being made fun of by Toby. I don't necessarily agree. I don't think we're being made fun of, really. But also, I would say I don't mind the mics, but also it kind of goes back to this idea of like, if you are a creator of any scale, it doesn't matter if you're like a Twitter artist on Twitter with like, or Blue Sky or Twitter or whatever with like 10 followers, or if you're Toby Fox with millions of people who've played his game, you kind of eventually do hit this situation where you feel like your work is being misinterpreted, and there's that impulse to push back, right? So I've had situations where people have like told me things about my OCs that don't necessarily fit my vision of them. They're not always bad things, but they're definitely things that go, I don't think I was going for that. But I'm a relatively small time creator, and I have to like hold back my. Sometimes I have to hold back that desire to like be like, well, actually, no, my character would never do that. And then you think about someone like Toby, who's got like a massive audience.
That's happening like times 100.
Yeah, exactly. And I can't even fathom that at that scale, right? So there's this desire, I think, by Toby. Like I'm kind of, just guessing here, right? I do think the mics represent Toby kind of at least trying to gently push back on this, on like how the work is being misinterpreted in some capacity. However, and maybe it might not be that deep. Maybe one day, 10 years from now, I'll meet Toby and he'll tell me, yeah, no, it wasn't that deep. But um, um, but I do think there's that desire to push back. And to be clear, it's a lot different than how Andrew Hussey was doing it in Homestuck, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, like Act 6 was entirely like creator versus fandom, right? And then Cyclonials took that concept and just went way further with it. And I do recommend Cyclonials. It is a very good work. It is kind of like it's like Hussey just completely off the chain, just being like, okay, this is how I feel. And you look at the way Hussey did it, which was a little more confrontational, I would say. Again, that's just his artistic choice, right? I'm not going to say that it was a bad choice. A lot of Homestuck fans, they like to say, "Oh, I hate Act 6 because it's just I hate the fan. He hates the fandom." Like, but I read it as a deeply fascinating work, actually. But it is confrontational. It's confrontational art, right? And then I look at the mic rooms, and it's a lot more mild in comparison. And I think generally speaking, Toby handles fame pretty well. He like posts on Blue Sky like once every 6 months to say, "Hi, I'm a dog and I'm making a game," and then he like goes away for a bit. That's probably the best way to handle fame.
You pretty much do. You pretty much have to disengage yourself completely, because the unfortunate thing, like the thing that drives you really insane as an artist, but that you really can't do anything about, is that you really cannot control people's reactions to your art.
No.
You're making art, you desperately want to get across a certain idea, but you just cannot control how people react to it. All you can control is the art itself. And especially in an age, that we've grown up in with online internet fandoms, which Toby is also a part of, and knowing how like important it is to kind of create in that fandom space. I can also see it being really difficult on his end, realizing, oh, I want to engage with this. I want to, make it clear what I'm trying to say, because that's really important to me. And I like seeing people's reactions and all that stuff, but you just can't. You have to separate yourself from it as much as possible. And I think that's especially hard, again, in this kind of medium, in this kind of day and age, where creators are way more accessible than they were like 20 years ago, kind of thing. So I can see the struggle with that in the mics, and that I don't think it is, supposed to be confrontational or anything like that. But there's still this kind of tension of, please, understand what I'm trying to say, and don't get too caught up in, how it's being said, kind of thing.
Yeah. You kind of, once you put something out into the world, you can't necessarily predict people's reactions to it. Case in point, the previous podcast I had, there were more than a few comments that were like, "Oh, you guys are so angry at each other," and like we were like, yeah, exactly. And like I brought it up with like everyone else, and they're like, "No, we were just having a conversation." I was like, "Yeah, exactly. We were being spirited, maybe." I wouldn't say we were like angry or fighting, but there were some people who interpreted it that way, and that's a good example of how audiences can perceive things in ways that you don't predict. And then for Toby, right, there was a whole fiasco with the rose losing petals during the chapter 4, Weird Route. So it he
I do
changed
find interesting that was patched so fast.
Yeah.
Clearly, the implication there was like, oh, that's probably getting into like the middle layer thing again, wherein the middle layer is supposed to be, this is akin to assault, but people took that to the next layer of like, oh, this is assault. This is the player assaulting Noel.
Yes, and
to basically change that to be like, nope, it's not like that. It's more like this. Like that's a. I'm kind of a little surprised that wasn't caught in testing, but on the other hand, maybe like most of the testers just didn't take it that way. But once it got out to a broader audience, you introduce this idea of like, oh, this is what's literally happening. And especially with this game, again, because there's so many layers of, okay, what's literally happening, what's metaphorically happening, what's happening on a narrative or symbolic level, and those can get a little muddy, sometimes on purpose. So I not surprised that he was like, okay, this is actually a serious topic. We got to make sure this is not what was intended for this scene.
Yeah. So, like I said, it's a really good example of how people may react in ways that you don't necessarily see coming. For as much foresight that Toby has, and he has a lot, right, to be able to sort of make games that react differently depending on who's playing it. You know, the puzzle box aspect, not even the puzzle box aspect. I don't really like that wording, but there's like a, you know how like, you know how like Toby's writing style is one of his like core tenets is becoming friends with the game. So he, part of that is learning how to anticipate how players will interact with the game. Uh, so he's got really good foresight, but you know, no one can catch everything, especially when you got millions of eyes on your game.
Yeah, and especially with like subjects that are really, you know, tenuous and
Sensitive, yeah.
sensitive, like stuff like assault or suicide and stuff like that.
Yes, definitely. Um, and I do think though, the reaction that the fandom had to the original symbolism, it makes me wonder if Death goes in a more Laura Palmer direction. Are people ready for that? You know, are
I gotta watch
people?
Twin Peaks at some point. I think it's gonna have to be required viewing for me. Because I keep seeing the
Yes,
Twin Peaks
yeah.
comparisons coming up. I'm like, I haven't seen Twin Peaks. I guess I gotta track it down and see it because I know people have been comparing Death to the Laura Palmer stuff. Although
It is a very sedating show, and you should probably watch it while drawing because it is like it's very
if it's
sedating
been
in
while
this.
drawing, then great. Because usually I can't watch new things while I'm working because
Yeah,
I have to focus on the art.
yeah.
But if it's that's why I usually listen to like a video essays. But if it's something that you can do while doing something else, then that's ideal.
Well, if you want to like analyze the cinematography and the art that goes into the show, um, sitting there and paying attention to it is probably the best option. But as far as like understanding where the story is going and like the plot beats and like you can just listen to it while you draw. Now, this is a David Lynch production, so the dialogue is often going to make you go, wait, what? And you're going to have to like scrub back and go, what does that mean? You know, what does that mean? Especially because everyone has like a very,
Myself into David Lynch the wrong way because I think the only David Lynch thing I've
yeah.
actually watched all the way through was Eraserhead.
Yeah. My first David Lynch experience was actually Inland Empire and Rabbits because Rabbits was bundled with Inland Empire, if I remember correctly. I was like in high school. Um, but yeah, I guess by Laura Palmer, bringing it back to Des and Laura Palmer. What I mean by that really is just that Des is potentially a very messy character and not nearly as idealized as people seem to, as like some people seem to think. Um, you know, a common thing in narratives where characters are haunting it or people are missing, someone's like, you know, gone, is in the first act of the story, people will fondly remember this character, right? So you get the impression that they're like a perfect little angel. And then towards the middle of the story, you introduce, you know, not so savory things about this character to cast doubt on like how everyone remembers them, you know, and then eventually you learn that they were just a very deeply flawed person who is still a victim deserving they're still a victim who is deserving of sympathy, but they were not a perfect angel. And so I look at the way the fandom reacted to the rose crumbling or wilting in the chapter 4 weird route, and I think about how Des may potentially be, you know, Vriska-esque. If you remember the course Vrisk course,
The Brisker
right?
course is back. It's the best.
Yeah, Death's Course, exactly. I've been making this joke for months. I'm like, part of me craves Death's Course. Part of me really like craves it. But I genuinely think it's just if she's not as perfect as some people think she is, like a big loving older sister who is like kind in every single way and is in fact like a very messy girl. I am not. I don't think a lot of people are ready for it. They couldn't handle Pearl, for God's sake. You know, Pearl Steven
Yeah.
Universe. So like I mean, it's not the same people, but you know, fandoms. There tends to be like a small but loud constituency of fandoms
I mean,
that
people
will
can't
just
handle like Susie
yeah.
making a joke about Chris flirting with everybody with pink thing now. I'm like, guys, come on, please.
Yeah, we did this with yeah. You know, that whole thing is like a rehash of like there was some, like, I remember when Undertale first came out. I was a Kickstarter backer, so I'm like fucking OG of Undertale fans. Yeah, I remember someone freaking out over the papyrus date, right? They were like, "Oh, this is inappropriate. This isn't right." When it was, a complete nothing burger. They're trying to make an everything bagel out of a nothing burger, and like it just like it just yeah. By the way, those two things are totally opposites in my mind. Just,
We'll need to find the middle muffin at some point.
the middle muffin, the ambivalent muffin.
The ambivalent muffin.
It it the pink thing just feels like that again. People react
does.
so the whole like, oh this date with Papyrus is so inappropriate, and it's like it's not that serious. Yeah,
It's okay, guys. It's a joke. And maybe it's because I didn't see the Kickstarter stuff, but it does kind of sound like a Papyrus date was toned down a bit so that it wasn't like, it's a bit more of a friend date kind of thing than like a romantic date.
Well, the Kickstarter only really went up to like when you're leaving Toriel to go into Snowden. I was just saying that I was able to organically watch fandom reactions from the very beginning. Is what I was getting at.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. Yeah, I actually have a funny story about that. So in 2016, I moved to Japan to be an English teacher / social studies teacher. And this wasn't even a full year, a full year of Undertale, right? Like Undertale's first anniversary was just a couple of months away. So this was July 2016. And there wasn't an official Japanese translation yet. There were probably fan translations. And I meet this kid at the school that I'm teaching at. It's a high school girl. I think she was like a senior, Sanensei, third year student, because high schools in Japan only go up to third year. They don't do 4 years. She was like practicing her English with me. She was like, "Do you know Undertale?" And I was like, yeah, like, yeah, I didn't want to, be like, yeah, I was a Kickstarter backer, but like, I was like, yeah, I know Undertale. But what came out of her mouth afterward floored me. She was like, "Do you know Undertale AU?" And I was like, "Whoa, kid, there's not even a Japanese translation of this game, and you're already in this deep?"
She's like, "I'm already in the Underfells."
Yeah, I was like, "Whoa,
Dust Tales, here I am."
Yeah, it really caught me off guard. But it's a really fun memory that I have regarding Undertale. And ever since then, every now and then I would have to do a self-introduction, jiko shokai, which means self-introduction, to new students every time I visited a new school or there was a new entering class or whatever. And one of the things I would do is I would say, "I like to draw," and I would draw like Toriel and Alphys and Goku on the board. One of these things is not like the other, but
gotta have Goku.
Yeah, we gotta have Goku. And like you would hear like some of the kids in the back going, "Whoa, Toriel!" "Whoa, it's Alphys!" So yeah, it's a fond memory that I have in like the back of my mind that comes up every now and then, just people's reaction. And I think that's the kind of reaction Toby likes from fans, right? So if
for sure.
If on the off chance Toby is watching this, just know, at the grassroots level, the way people reacted to my drawings of the Undertale cast is very indicative of like how powerful, his writing is.
For sure. Toby, if you're watching this, also your music is amazing. I tried to play for my mom, who does not care about video games. She did not care when I tried to play Undertale for her because she does not care about video games, but she was still like, "I really liked that music. It was so nice." So you've impressed even the boomer parents who don't know about video games.
Score.
Really good music.
Really, really good music. Actually, even like you compare the Undertale soundtrack to Deltarune, you can really, really hear like the evolution in like his ability to compose. Like it is very night and day. Like the Undertale music is still banging. It is absolutely incredible. But like if the Undertale music is Super Saiyan 1, Then like Deltarune is just every chapter is just progressively another level of Super Saiyan. So we're at what? Super Saiyan 2,
I don't know
3.
how many Super Saiyan levels there are.
Yeah. Oh, well, we're at Super Saiyan Blue right now. I don't know where I'm going with this allegory, this metaphor. I mean, just Toby's music is getting better and better every time.
All I know is I've had like Flower Castle on repeat for like a month, and I'm still not tired.
Yeah. Oh my God, Flower Man has been my go-to every single morning when I'm on my walk. Like it gets my blood pumping. Um, and also like actually, I would say there's a few tracks in this game where I only listen to it when I'm sitting at home because they feel like the type of tracks that are ideally ones that you listen to idly, not idly, like listen to like when you're like alone. Like for example, I think I'm in love. That track just like it's so warm, it brings me back to like certain like teen year memories. And so like I sit there every time I listen to it and it gives me like a very warm fuzzy feeling that I wouldn't get if I'm out for a walk. Uh, it becomes too atmospheric when I'm out on a walk.
It's perfect for the scene.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. So now um we've gotten a lot of that. We gotten through a lot of that, and now I kind of want to uh, talk about if we could rate a few theories, but not on a scale from 1 to 10. Instead, I want to or rather, let's combine the last two sections that I have in my notes here. Right, one is fandom landscape, which is how this chapter has changed the both the fandom and theorizing landscape, and then we can go into some of the theories that were like really big as soon as some of the like bigger theories that have come out of chapter 5, and then we can rate those. So
Okay, I'm afraid I might be a little mean. I'll do my best.
I kind of doubt you have the ability to be mean. You're so like giggly. But I guess mean for LynxGriffin standards.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. um. So okay. What are some what are some of the ways you've seen the fandom landscape change as far as theories go, or from your perspective?
I guess I don't know what it is, but I kind of feel like people have gotten a bit more doomer with where they think the story is going.
Yeah.
It's not something I really agree with. I'm like, you all are really going doomerism on, like, oh, people are gonna die and we're gonna have to weird root this and kill like, I don't know. It feels almost like kind of funny enough, bit of a reversion back to chapter 1 reactions, or oh, Chris is gonna kill everybody. I don't know. It's felt very doomer, and it's just not something I jive with. I actually do still think, despite everything, that we'll get, at worst, a bittersweet ending. I don't think we're in store for like something that's really nihilistic or cynical or depressing.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm.
I'm not sure why that is, and I think also some people were like, again, really frustrated that a lot of our outstanding questions are still not clear. Sometimes things are even less clear. Like, again, what's Carol's deal? What is the Knight's deal? What kind of object is Rousey? Like, that all became kind of less clear, and that might have frustrated people a bit. Even if it's like, okay, we still got plenty of time, you know, in terms of just storytelling to tackle all of these subjects, I think, thoroughly. But I don't know. I guess people might feel a little bit more unmoored because all these thoughts they had about, oh, it's definitely going to go this direction, were kind of upended. Definitely, this chapter surprised me in a lot of ways, and I didn't even share a lot of the thoughts. I'm like, oh, it's going to be friend, and the roaring is going to start at the end of chapter 5, and Chris is going to lose their hand now. I'm like, no, they're not. They're going to lose their hand like chapter 7. But
Yeah.
I don't know. Just I guess people had like these really different expectations, and didn't quite, because they didn't go in that direction. Um, got kind of doomer about the story. I'm not sure how
I
else
agree.
to put it.
No, I agree. In the circles that I hang around in, and I apologize to everyone who knows me and has spoken to me about this, but I do think there's kind of like a cloud hanging over a lot of people's heads with regards to like they kind of feel like the story is a lot less predictable. They think it's convoluted or that Toby's not going to stick the landing. But I disagree because I actually um, I think chapter five, even though it wasn't quote unquote a lore heavy, which by the way I'm kind of tired of the word lore. I think we need to retire that word at some point. But
Put that on the shelf.
yeah, put that on the shelf. Yeah. I feel like chapter five was Toby looking directly at the camera and saying, I have given you all the pieces that you need to approximate how this story is going to conclude, but it won't matter because the emotional payoff is going to knock your socks off. And so I genuinely believe that after chapter five, we have like everything we need at this point to like make kind of end game theories, even if people don't really think that. Um, and that's fine. I understand, but the way people doomed about the story not progressing in a specific direction, not deconfirming or confirming one thing versus the other, um, it feels like there's almost this competitive mindset with the theory space, right? I often Yeah, it's kind of like Smash Brothers for fun, for glory, right? You know, I'm on the for fun side rather than the for glory side. Um, I think a lot about Snarlinger's video. I don't know if you ever watched Snarlinger's videos. He has made two videos, and they're both absolute bangers. You should totally watch them sometime. I think they still hold up. Yeah, yeah. I think they still hold up. One is about the meta narrative, the meta narrative, and the other is about like the philosophy behind the names of the characters. In one of those videos, um, Snarlinger has a quote that I always come back to, which is theorizing is an inherently emotional affair. Which is to say, you know, people they get very caught up and invested in one interpretation of the story versus another, and it becomes kind of like this. I'm not going to put words in his mouth. You know, that quote is what he said, and now this is what I'm saying. Um, I do think people kind of lose sight of there being a story being told, and they get very competitive about it. They start attaching their feelings about certain theories to the fandom at large. So, for example, you know, I hung out around a lot of Chris Knighters, which Chris Knight was an extremely contentious theory, sometimes unfairly so. I think I'm speaking as someone who was like on the Death Knight train very early. I had
Weren't you like first on the Death Knight train?
yeah,
Basically,
yeah. I was like the first publicly recorded Death Knighter on Twitter, which is very funny. Um,
what?
yeah, no,
I guess that was part of the problem is saying like even saying something like you won. It's like
yeah, gotta win explosion, yeah. But um, it for me, right? Death Knight was my intuitive pick, and Chris Knight was kind of my logical pick because I felt that a lot of the evidence for Chris Knight was going to lead to either Chris is the Knight or Chris is working with the Knight. And well, we got, you know,
working with the Knight, yeah.
they got Chris working with the Knight. They got the Chris part right, and they got the Knight part half right, right? But where I was going with this is that people didn't really want to engage with Chris Knight, and this is not me relitigating that stuff. That's, you know, I'm not the Japanese soldier fighting 30 years after the war. I wasn't in that army. I wasn't enlisted, but like it people got so caught up in their camps, like, oh, it's Alvin, it's Papyrus, it's, you know, so and so, that they forgot that there was a story being told, right? And that the evidence for Chris being complicit in this plot was there for a reason, right? It wasn't just willy nilly thrown there for funsies, right? You know, the whole, you know, oh, Chris just wanted to eat pie while watching TV. You know, that stuff was kind of like, are we engaging with the story or not?
No,
And
it's definitely clear there is more going on there. It's just I think something that happens with theorizing on. I kind of wish people would almost lean into it more, is like, if you are going to theorize about a story, you have to recognize the fact that this is a story. It's not a puzzle. This is a narrative. So in a sense, you have to imagine a narrative, and like you can do that through evidence, stuff like that, or you can do that through fan fiction, fan art, and stuff like that. I kind of prefer the latter, just because I imagine stuff out as narratives. But obviously, narratives are something that we get really emotional about. So, if somebody might present an idea to you of like, oh, I think the narrative does this, and you're like, oh, I don't think the narrative could do this, and it kind of gets you heated about it, sort of thing. Because then you're like, well, it's like this crossfire between, oh, there's evidence for it, but would this work as the narrative, kind of back and forth? I don't know what I'm even saying here. There's a lot of feelings involved in
Right.
that kind of stuff. I know that I'm susceptible to that, and I feel like I have to watch myself a bit of like, no, don't get too attached. Something's probably going to change, sort of thing.
Yeah. And I guess to my broader point about theorizing, to the quote of Snarlinger saying that theorizing is an emotional affair, the way people got heated whenever you tried presenting Chris Knight and any other Knight candidate for that matter, it speaks to people making a version of Deltarune in their mind, which I can't blame them for. There's like there's like a huge 3-year gap between like chapter 2 and 3 and 4. But it is, again, an emotional affair, right? So is shipping, so is this, and this. And then people start also making rivalries with each other. Like they go from like having beefs with people who are into one theory versus another to like straight up having direct beef with specific people. And they start to associate their enjoyment of that game with the people that they're beefing with, and they end up ruining it for themselves. And this is a story as old as fandom itself, right? There's this like
Very true.
There's this Tumblr post from a few years ago, I think, where there was like, it's covered in ooze, which
It's literally happened to me so often in fandoms. Like, it happened with like RP, where I'm like, oh, this person is RPing this character, and I don't like what they're doing. I can never engage with the media that this character is from. It's got the ooze on it.
Yeah. So the post was like, some people don't like certain media because of some of the emotional connections, or rather, emotional repulsion they got from like certain people in that fandom, or someone that they know specifically, or they associate it with like something negative. And like, for example, Homestuck is a really big one, where like for a lot of people, Homestuck is covered in ooze. It's they often they'll say, hey, often they'll say, well, Homestuck is fine, I don't have a problem with it, but it's covered in ooze. It's covered in the ooze. And people, what I'm saying is, I wish more people would take a step back before they let fandom rivalry, theory rivalry, and so on ruin a story that they were loving already. You know, like like please, don't let these rivalries or complex feelings ruin the story for you. It's okay to be disappointed in the direction of a story. Of course, everyone's got a different opinion. But please don't like think about all the people who piss you off in the fandom and how all their theories are wrong, and you hate that how wrong they are, or you hate that they proved you wrong or whatever. Don't think of them and then say, oh, this story is cooked. If you don't like the story, that's one thing, but don't let yourself try to separate yourself from what other people are saying, right? It's hard, but I don't know. I just feel like people should. That's
definitely advice I can take to heart for sure. So got to remind myself of that constantly, because that is very true. I definitely think like in terms of theorizing what will happen next in a story, I think it's really totally fine and good to imagine where the story is going to go and stuff like that, and write it out, draw it out, explain it out, video it out. I've done that multiple times. You just have to be prepared to let go of that version of the story and accept okay, this is going to be done differently, and I've had this idea, and here's the idea. I presented it. Now it's time to move on to a new idea. Now that we have new information and stuff, and be open to other possibility.
Yeah, and that's how I'm taking it. So to bring this all back to what started this entire line of conversation, the whole thing with people kind of dooming about like the story, both what they think will happen in the story and also how they feel that the story isn't moving where they want it to move. You know, just I think a little patience goes a long way.
Very
Um,
important, yeah.
and remember, this is an art piece that Toby is making. It is a labor of love, and you might not agree with his vision. And like, if by the end of it you go, "Oh well, that sucked," then that's fine. It happens, right? Art does not necessarily need to speak to everyone, right? Or rather, like
Like if it speaks to
yeah,
everyone, then it speaks to no.
yeah. Like a piece of art is like a single piece of art. Yes, should like not have to speak to everyone. It's kind of what Toby said. I think it was in a newsletter where he said something like, "For someone attuned in a specific way, this story is for them," or something like that. I think it was in a newsletter at some point. Yeah.
I remember that, and I was like, well, man, I hope I'm one of those people. Then I hope with this that I'm attuned to this.
Yeah. I'm definitely attuned. I think.
I think I am so far. I'm definitely every chapter that's come out. I have been
Yeah.
more excited with where the story is going. I'm not been disappointed, even though
Yeah.
it's not what I've expected. I've never been disappointed by what we've done.
Yeah. I think just the only way Deltarune's ending could drop the ball for me, really, is or Deltarune as a story can drop the ball for me is if it turns out everyone was human all along and Chris was just seeing everyone as like I remember those Night in the Woods theories back in like 2017 and
Were those theories for Night in the Woods? Is that everybody?
yeah, there was a theory that May just sees everyone as talking animal people, and I kind of have an aversion to anything that like takes the symbolism that non-human characters bring into a story, which is they are representative of the other. And in this case, it's actually holding up a mirror to Chris, right? And so if it turns out that everyone was human all along, I would be a little sad about it because I kind of emotionally connect with talking animal people a lot better than human characters. It's
Yeah.
not to say I can't connect with human characters, but there's a special sauce with talking animal people that resonates with me in a way that an anime girl, for example, would not.
No, I totally feel you there.
And Pink is really cute though. Pink is cool. But uh, but I don't think that's where the story is going, and frankly, it's an
No, I don't think
overblown.
it is either.
It's not something I'm afraid of. I'm pretty happy where the story is going. I'm very go with the flow kind of person.
Yeah, I think the only like way that I think the story would disappoint is if it ends up in this sort of thing of like, oh, none of it was real. Did you know that you were playing a video game the whole time? All of their memories were fake, and hometown is just exists in a void, and there's nothing else outside it. Everything is fictional. Did you know it's fictional? Like, I think that would disappoint me because I feel like part of the point of this series, the point of it is like it's fictional, but it's also real. Like it is real within its own universe. You are a participant in this universe that is fictional to you but real to them. So I would not like the kind of boo put away your escapism kind of thing. This is not it was never real kind of thing. I would feel and that one is kind of like, okay, I know there's an actual like danger of that. I can kind of see it going that direction. I don't think it will, but I could see it happening that way. So there's a little bit of fear there. That's probably where my only doom comes in. I want there to be like this sense of, hey, again, these are not real to you, the player, but these are real. This situation is real to the characters.
Yeah. How would you feel if like something that came up in a few conversations with some friends is this idea of like, um, this idea of like hometown being similar to the opening segment of Kingdom Hearts 2 with Roxas, where Roxas just can never go to the beach ever because that's not what the simulation is built to do. Like, how do you
And I
feel?
can I'm accepting of the fact that like okay, what is very clear is that hometown has been separated from the real world in some degree, whether it's in a simulation or it's in a barrier or it's just in some way cut off. That's fine. That totally makes sense, especially in the sense of this has to happen in order for us to interface with Deltarune's world. I guess what I don't like is the idea that nothing else exists outside of hometown and nothing ever has and nothing ever will. This is all there is. I kind of feel like that runs counter to like what Toby was talking about in the 10th anniversary, with all this extra stuff that was added. And he's basically saying, this world is as big as you want it to be. I invite you to come behind the curtain with me. I don't want Deltarune to go the direction of, this is all there ever was. There is nothing behind the curtain. I think that would make me sad.
Yeah, I was actually just right now just thinking about like how one of the prizes in the Spanton sweepstakes was like a Nightmare Before Christmas snow globe that kept freaking breaking like when they were trying to ship it to someone. But like I could see a situation where hometown is in a snow globe, especially because chapter 4 we have Gerson, who his light world object is a hammer in a glass container, and then chapter 5 it's flowers in glass containers. So like right off the bat,
Noelle's saying she's watching her life through glass. Again,
glass,
I'm
yes.
totally fine with hometown has been separated from the wider world for the purposes of doing this narrative, especially in the context of us playing a video game. I just am little squeamish about like this was all built from scratch and there is nothing. It's last Thursdayism. Asriel never existed, Des never existed because nothing exists outside of what was programmed in the game.
Yeah. No, I think hometown is real. Like you're saying, because Toby wants us to interact with it like it's a real world. Hence the no Lightner merch stuff.
I was thinking of too was like, okay, if everything is supposed to be fake for us, then where's my Susie plush? what makes her distinct?
Exactly.
Or I'll say in that context.
Yeah, exactly. I actually do think that whatever is going on with hometown, is kind of like again, like you said, it is a real place. I don't think we're ever going to see what's outside of it because again, it is.
We will. That's going to be up to our imaginations. It's like, okay, it's there, yes, but you won't be able to see it.
Yes, again, the lake represents the boundary before the ending of a book, and then everything outside it is a possibility space, right? So it's going to be for us to imagine.
Unfortunately, that probably means we might not ever get to see Asriel because if he is in college outside of whatever dimension space hometown is right now, and that dimension space is for us to play the game, then them being free of that space and hometown being returned to the real world means that we won't be able to actually see Asriel because he's cut off from us, outside of the dome, the snow globe that that hometown's in. And it's like, oh no.
See, well, chapter 5 did say that basically this is not Undertale, and if this is not Undertale, then maybe we will get to see Asriel. It's in the sense that like we didn't get to see him grow up into like a healthy young man in Undertale, but in Deltarune, maybe.
Nice, I would like to. Maybe like as we're leaving the game, let's get a little
right. Well, we see the back of his head. Like we see the back of his head. Yeah,
that and Papyrus.
That's another thing. Everyone's sibling is just fucking missing in this town.
Where'd all your siblings go?
Yeah. Where'd all the siblings go? Des is gone. Papyrus is gone. Asriel's not there. Like, what is going on?
At least Caddy and Caddy have each other for better or worse.
Yeah. They're a weird exception in the sense that their name does the whole like Susie with a Y, Susie with an IE thing. Just like, it's really weird.
So funny.
No, I don't want to dip into that speculation because that would go into like a million different directions. But what I want to talk about though is the major theories that have like come up in the fandom since Chapter 5 dropped, and if there's any that stand out to you in particular.
Oh goodness, I'm unfortunately I'm only thinking of Frizzell Knight, which people have talked about to death, and which I do not like. So I don't know if I need to add
Hmm.
onto that. Um,
Yeah.
what else has come up in that context? Again, we got trans Ralsei more evidence for, which I think is really cool.
Yeah. Um, the Crizel Knight, I saw that, and I think my first reaction was just kind of like, eh, it's okay, but what is Death doing then? Like,
Yeah, exactly.
what is she doing? Yeah, like it's fine. I vibe with the idea of reintroducing human monster fusions again. I just don't
Like there
really.
are some ideas. Like I think Susie's gonna get the soul in the future. That could be a monster fusion thing. I think we might even do something with time travel. I can see that happening. I do not think it'll work like Undertale time travel does, but I think maybe if we have 3 save files that could be for a reason. We could do some interesting stuff with that. I guess I'm just really not on board with the idea of the weird root being required for any kind of ending stuff, because I think that takes all the bite out of the weird root. If like the whole point of it is like you are doing something you're not supposed to do, you're breaking the game. There are going to be consequences for that. I don't think that should, in that sense, like yeah, if you require the weird root to understand the full story, then the weird root is just not that scary anymore.
Well, the weird route does provide additional context to things, which is what drags people into.
But I don't think it's necessary context.
No, it's probably not necessary context, but it is kind of bait on Toby's part, right? It's kind of like it makes your decision to engage with that route meaningful, right? Because like again, you've been given the protein, right? This is your protein for this route is the extra context, right? That's the protein. Um,
I'm gonna go bite.
and we're gonna go bite on that. Yes, I'm like the Patrick Star meme with all the hooks in his mouth, right? Taking the bait. Um, you're right. I don't think the weird route is necessary to get any super special ending, which does bring me to the other major theory is it's not a new theory per se, but it is one that got reinforced, which is the idea of a secret third route, right? The twisted route. Because if you do abort or like accidentally abort the chapter 5 weird route, there are some significant differences in the Dark World segment. And so it feels like it's like a secret third thing in a way, you know?
Mm. I'll be
Um,
honest. I don't like. I don't know what to make of secret third root ideas, kind of thing. Maybe I haven't heard any ideas regarding that have like really compelled me so far. I've been like, oh, I would really want to see that. That'd be so cool. Because so far it's mostly amounted to, oh, we're gonna have to like, use the twisted sword and kill people and stuff like that. I'm like that. I don't find that super compelling. I don't know. Like I guess there could be something there, but I haven't put much thought into like what a secret third route would do, especially in the context of like, okay, if there is only one ending, what would change enough about this? What kind of context would this generate? But I don't know. I don't know what to make of extra third route kind of stuff.
yeah.
It definitely feels like there's something going on there. Like I guess you got to use the twisted sword for something, but I don't know. It feels way outside my viewpoint at this point.
Um, yeah, I'm with you there. I've never really given deeper thought over like what a secret third route would entail. However, I did watch a video today. I don't remember the name of the creator, and I apologize if you are that creator watching this podcast right now, or listening to it rather. Um, they argued that what the ending for each of these routes would do is it would run through a different version of the angel, because the angel is kind of being set up as like this holy trinity deal, right? So it would be kind of like the normal route would run through player angel, or I don't remember exactly what they said. I apologize again if I'm misconstruing this person's argument. It was kind of like one route would run through player angel, one route would run through Noel angel, and the other route would run through Gaster angel, and this would give context to the one ending, regardless. Like it would act as a filter that would give you context into like the ending.
Okay, okay, that's an idea that's actually compelling, because that's another one of those things that's we don't know what the deal with the angel is. We've got all these little bits and pieces about around it, like, oh, it could be Noelle, it could be the player, it could be so and so, but or just not any of the above, and just its own creature sort of thing. We feel like we got some extra stuff, like Ralph praying to the angel in this, and it says he's been doing that all the time. I think also cast manager says, "Oh, Master of Order and Chaos," which interesting title for the angel. But the idea of the ending being the same, but who or what the angel is, being a little bit different, or like a different aspect of it, that could be interesting to play with.
Yeah, yeah, and it kind of fits into what my conception of the one ending thing always was, which is just the ending just has a different context depending on how you proceeded with the game. But to be honest, I actually haven't even given the ending of Deltarune all that deep thought, because when Toby says there's something more important than reaching the ending, I completely believe him. And so I genuinely believe the process is more important than what happens at the end. It is still tantalizing to think about, but I often run into a wall of like, I can't come up with anything. Now,
Yeah, I feel like I've come up with lots of different
yeah,
ideas, and then every time a new chapter comes out, I'm like, I don't know if this quite fits. I've got to change it again, kind of thing. So
yeah, Paper Trail's ending was certainly
basically I
interesting.
want to like apply the themes that I've been thinking about more clearly, but I'm like, I don't know how those would apply to like how things would end, especially in terms of like, okay, if this was happened in a dream, like what exactly, like what was it? What was it exactly? And it heck, even like, is his dream ending going to be exactly where it ends, or that could be like well before we actually stop the game. We're not even sure like at what point in the end like that ending dream happened.
Yeah, and it actually, it's funny because I actually had a dream about Deltarune's ending a couple of years back, where the camera was slowly panning over hometown as like a white light was like slowly changing all of the houses into like gray, real life looking houses, and all the residents also started just slowly vanishing as like Don't Forget was playing in the background. And right as the song was playing, Chris was like the last thing to vanish. And then I woke up and I was like, what the hell was that?
What brain? What? What did
Like, what the hell? Yeah. I often have Deltarune dreams, which, surprise, surprise, something you think about often ends up also showing up in your dreams a lot. And I often wake up with like a, what the hell was that? I think I told you about my dream about Miss Carol, where, yeah, before chapters 3 and 4 came out, I had a dream where I was my persona in the school uniform and everything. And I called Carol a bitch to her face. And she, like, responded by inviting me to a fancy dinner, a very tense dinner. There was like, you could cut the tension with a knife or a katana. And I was like, Mrs. Holiday, you can't talk to your daughter that way. Like it just
something we all wish we could say to her
yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah. I don't know why I had that freaking dream. It's so silly. Like,
this is the only way I can get it across. If I can't do it in game, I'll do it in my subconscious.
yeah. Maybe I just have a psychic connection to the other universe where Deltarune is real. Yeah, just fucking astral projecting, which apparently is a term Toby does not like.
No. Interesting. I don't know if he's ever talked about that.
Yes, in the Deltarune chapter 1 playthrough with Fangamer, there was a part where when Chris's soul comes from like the top of the screen during the Susie and Lancer fight, one of the dads is like, is like it's like astral projection, and then Toby, he types into his text to speech, "I don't approve of that phrasing." Yeah, very funny, right? It's very silly. I don't think it means anything, or it could, right? Especially because chapter 4, Chris just kind of decides to go full Avatar state and like think what Susie's doing while they're fighting like the fake Gerson statue.
Yep.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Just
But brains
think.
are super funny in regards to like, I gotta take care of this in my subconscious somehow.
Yeah, thinking about uh, saying Chris going into the Avatar state. Thinking about that made me remember. I actually kind of feel that Noelle is slowly going through like apotheosis. I don't know if you got that feeling as well.
So kind of funny based on the comic I'm doing right now. But yeah, that's something's going on with that where I think maybe even without us, she's got some kind of ability or power that's a little bit supernatural, I would say. That again, I
Yeah.
want to see her game breaking abilities used outside of the weird root context and in the normal root in something like that. That angel symbolism has to mean something. I don't think it's something about like, oh, she's always been the angel the whole time, because I think if that was the case, like Rouse and Chris or Rouse and Susie would have different things to say about those panels that talk about the angel or talk about Noelle. But there's some connection there that we can't quite see yet that's coming about.
It could be a. I don't know if you ever watched Madoka.
I haven't actually.
So no, then I'm not going to use that metaphor. But I mean, it could be just a case of like Noelle. Uh, this kind of touches on. I don't know if you watched Goner Gnostic's video about the sort of cosmology of Deltarune, where
A while back, I can't remember.
this one was kind of recent. It was just like a couple of weeks before Chapter 5 dropped. So so Balder, which is what he usually goes by, it's a guy I know. He made a video about the cosmology of Deltarune and how it's a very Gnostic coded story. And in Gnosticism, there's this idea of like a god within the universe, the demiurge, but then outside the universe, there's like an even greater god known as Abraxas, and like they are parts of each other. And so the demiurge is kind of like a false god, and then like above them, Abraxas is the true god. Um, and there's also this idea in fiction that's based on Gnosticism of like a god who is bored of the world around them because everyone is simply a reflection of them. And you certainly do see that in like some of Toby's old ROM hacks where Ness starts to realize he's actually Gigas, right? Or Gygas. Um, and he's really upset about that because now nothing is challenging him anymore. And so I think of Noelle feeling no longer challenged by the world around her with the whole like nothing scares her anymore. And the one person who can scare her, which is like Alfie's or even Susie at this point, being the thing that she's attracted to, it could point in that direction, right? That Noelle is God without knowing she's God. She could just be like Haruhi from The Melancholy of Haruhi Suzumiya, if you've ever watched that one.
Yeah, I think we talked about. I haven't seen that one, but I think you
Yeah.
that a little bit.
Yeah, which is for the audience, it's an anime in the 2000s about a girl who is essentially God and can change the world around her unconsciously, but she doesn't know that she's God. And if she's not kept happy, she will unconsciously create a roaring like event where this pocket dimension opens up and these giants form of her negative thoughts and they start like destroying the earth and recreating it in like a new image for her. Um, I'm not saying that's where the story is going, but like I could see it.
There's some element of that there. That there's something special about Noelle and her own, I guess, emotional state that kind of spills out into the rest of the world.
Icy's Pizza, like the icy guy, like the mascot face, the mascot's face changing to look more like Noel. Yeah. And so when that gag came up, right, of like the Icy's logo changing, I instantly thought back to like the hospital Icy chart about like the pain, and I was like, oh no, that chart's about Noel.
He's in pain and she's smiling and she's sweating. Oh no, watch out! But yeah, I can definitely see something like that going on with Noel. It's really hard to like quantify like mechanically how it would work, but emotionally you can like kind of feel it there in the back of your mind with everything.
Yeah, and one final thought I had about Noelle and Apotheosis and looking at her life through glass is I can imagine a really cool cutscene where she grows wings and the wings are so big they crack the glass container that Hometown is in.
Oh, hell yeah.
You know, yeah, or an egg or whatever it may be. It kind of goes back to Madoka again, which I know you haven't watched. I don't want to spoil it, but there's this idea. Do you care actually about the spoiler?
I don't mind if you spoil Madoka. That's fine.
Okay, so at the end of the show, she becomes effectively God by wishing to become a law of physics, right? Where she without getting too deep into like the way the story works, she can exist at any moment in time to save people before they hit their like despair apex. And 1 second, please. My room. Okay. I'll probably have to edit that out, but yeah. So I guess we can start wrapping up.
Yes.
I guess I was gonna originally have us rate new theories, but like really the two big ones we've kind of already covered. If you have any
in terms of smaller ones out there, I'd probably need to like a refresher on.
There's a few. One that I saw this morning was kind of like this idea of what I was saying about Death Knight asterisk. This idea that the knight is actually kind of like an echo of Death. This person is calling it Echo Knight. This idea that Death is the knight is like a collection of memories of Death, and I can see that. I thought it was a very chill take. I'm okay with that, in the sense that it is still
Death asterisk categories.
Yeah, and so yeah. So normally I have a bunch of theories and I sort them into different buckets, which is like, I think this is happening. I don't think this is going to happen. And then I have that's bullshit, but I believe it. Like that one JoJo's Bizarre Adventure panel. And that's bullshit, but I believe it is a theory that I could see happening, but I don't think that's where the story is going, but it would be sick. So after chapters 3 and 4, Chris Slash was kind of in my that's bullshit, but I believe it category. I felt like I don't see it being correct, but I could see the argument for it, and I do think that would be kind of cool. But I don't know if you have any theories that fall into the that's bullshit, but I believe it bucket.
Oh my goodness. I have like one very small scale unhinged theory. I don't know if it's necessarily bullshit. It's just or bullshit. Just
bullshit. Yeah.
Just wild and kind of wacky.
Oh.
I think Susie's going to eat the soul. I think that's how she gets it. I think like I know that sounds like a shit post, but I think there's foreshadowing for it. Mainly in that we've already kind of got this like setup of, okay, we haven't really seen, monster with human soul kind of thing. We had it suggested in Undertale, but we never really got to see it in action as much, aside from, final form of Azrael, but it wasn't quite the same as what we saw, what we were talked about. And like, it'd be cool to see that here. You can kind of see that being suggested, but at the same time, like, there's really no indication that, a monster absorbing a human soul or vice versa is something that exists in Deltarune. Humans and monsters seem to have, like, kind of equivalent souls. They don't, not really, like, a difference between termination for them. So there's not really a setup there, but what could be a lot of foreshadowing is all these moments where Susie's like, hey, how do you feel about losing your face? And you're going to end up like this apple, bitten in half if you keep smelling like apples. It's really hard for me to not take a bite out of you because your hair smells like apples. What? Apple shampoo? I didn't drink any of that. Oh, would Susie recognize you if you switched to a different fruit for your shampoo? Oh, like that's weirdly keeps coming up. And hey, what popular red fruit does the soul resemble? Specifically, what popular red fruit whose consumption is frequently used to symbolize gaining the knowledge of good and evil? Like, I don't know, dialogue choices. What's more, usually the soul is being, situated with light, the light of hope and stuff like that. We've had this big comparisons of like the players' participation in Deltarune is like the light of hope. And hey, and it's going to be used to, overwrite the dark. Like that is the player's role kind of in the story, is the agent of change that overwrites the dark, which Garrison says, hey, that's what you're going to get, Susie. Hey, what's another writing implement that can write on dark? It's chalk, aka light candy. What's the first thing we see Susie doing in the game? She is eating the chalk. She's going to eat the soul. That's my unhinged mini theory.
You know what? That's less unhinged than what I was doing. So, you know what? Go for it. I think I could see it. Like, yeah, at the end of the other podcast, or not at the end, but I was saying how like I think Chris has a yak back with like every single line, like every line that they know they'll have to say pre-recorded into it. Yeah, it's like an insane crack theory. Obviously, that has way less evidence of what you're telling me here, but I could totally see a situation where love finds its way to the girl in the form of a meal.
Yep.
You know,
it's a little soul food.
Yeah. It's literal soul food. I could totally see that happening. And then she becomes
it's
like
small
Susie
scale,
Scylla.
but that's my unhinged rant. Look out in the future. You thought getting hit with a hockey stick was bad. There's more to come.
Hockey sticks?
Like from chapter 4 where Chris is smacking us with a hockey stick.
Oh, yes. Yes, the very Tom and Jerry-esque sequence.
Mm-hmm.
Some of my favorite. That I'm gonna have to put that in my. I'm gonna have to put your theory in my "that's bullshit, but I believe it" theory alongside Chris Slash.
Yay!
Yeah. I don't know how big you are on Chris Slash, but yeah.
Unfortunately, I'm not big on Chris Slash.
That's understandable. Like I said, that's why it's in the category that it is for me. Cool, thought provoking, but not quite where I see the story going.
Yeah, I think there's like we can already do really interesting things with the fact that Chris is working with the Knight and might do something to betray their friends without having to go like in this specific direction.
Yeah. So we are getting a little. Yeah, we're 3 hours in. I guess I want to wrap this up a bit by asking you to talk about. I guess you already spoke about your like Deltarune projects that you're working on, but sorry, you spoke about the comic you're working on. Do you want to talk about any other project that you are currently working on related to Deltarune at all? Or if you want to reflect on any that you've done.
Again, it's I'm still working on Eldratrune, which is very different. It's just diverged a whole lot from where canon is, which has been fun because normally when I do fandom stuff, like fan comics, I try and stick pretty close to canon, but that has just ended up being just completely different AU. It's obviously like I started it in the chapter 2 era, and I'm hoping to finish it before chapter 6, but I don't want to keep doing it up until chapter 7. I kind of want it done. But that's been a fun diversion into just extremely different takes on the characters in terms of setting. But it's also been interesting just dealing with Paper Trail and some of the shorter ones I've done that have been kind of like prediction comics based. Like I get an idea for a scene in my head. I'm like, oh, I think it could really be interesting if that goes that way, and then just kind of draw it out. And again, I kind of like doing it that way because even when it ends up being really incorrect, it still feels like, okay, I've told a story, like I've gotten an emotional feeling across. And I kind of feel like that happened with, Paper Trail and stuff like that. Even though a lot of people did not like Paper Trail's ending, people still enjoyed the process of reading it. Um, especially while we were waiting between chapters 1 and 2. And to that sense, I was really happy that I decided to go for it, pump all of that out, even if it ended up being like super not correct in terms of what's happening. And it also kind of, I guess, helped train me to like be wrong about my thoughts of where the story is going. Like, okay, you can make a guess now and try and write out how you think it'll happen. And probably it'll be wrong, but I don't regret the time I spent like telling that really different take on the story. Because at the end you still have a different take on the story.
That's a really beautiful sentiment.
And it's really fun.
That is a very beautiful sentiment. I like that sentiment a lot. Enjoying the process more than like the end goal, right? And I think that does tie into Deltarune itself. And I think Toby kind of really wants us to enjoy the ride rather than think about the ending. And telling people,
Sure, yeah.
I've been telling like younger fans who hang around in the servers that I'm in that like, I know you guys want answers. Like in general, when you're young, you just really want answers. But in this case, um, don't be in a rush to get all the answers in general, but also in Deltarune. Because speaking as a fandom elder, this is a very unique moment in time for you. You're going to look one day. We're going to have like all of the answers in the game. We're gonna like have an ending. We're going to be able to see the game from start to finish, and it's going to be fun. And then when the party ends, you're gonna start feeling a little melancholic about like the friends you made along the way, or like all the theories you used to make, and like nothing's ever gonna hit those notes again. Now you might find a new thing to obsess over, but it's not gonna be the same feeling. Nothing can really ever make you feel the same way again, in general. Otherwise, you're just chasing a high that will never come, right? You're chasing a feeling that doesn't have a name anymore. And so I tell people, yeah, you just enjoy the process of theory crafting while you can. It's kind of like how I used to speculate on Smash Brothers rosters back in the day when I was a teenager, waiting for Brawl to come out. I was like, oh man, so and so is going to be a character because XYZ reason. And once the game came out, I enjoyed the game, but I was also like, oh man, I can't speculate anymore. It's not fun anymore. So enjoy the process and then enjoy the story as it comes out. Yeah.
Basically, be creative in this particular way while you can, because it is a special time.
Yeah. And that's a lesson from us fandom elders here. Maybe we should have, maybe I should have like had us behind the teacher's desk instead.
Yeah. I was raised by teachers, so that's probably where I belong.
Yeah, and I was a teacher, so it's kind of funny. We both kind of have an educational background, kind of. Um. Uh. So yeah,
This is a special time for the fandom, and it's a time to be creative, and I guess also it would say in the sense of being creative, don't be afraid to be wrong. Like you don't have to be right about everything. The process of sharing your ideas, of thinking through things, of creating your own narratives based off what you know, even when they're wrong, it's never time wasted. It's still worthwhile in of itself.
yeah, and the flip side of theorizing being an inherently emotional affair is that it is also a self exploration, which is probably why it's an emotional affair at times. But it's self exploration in the sense that you learn what it is that you gravitate towards in terms of like creative work, and then it lets you discover what it is that you like, what it is you don't like. And theory crafting is a method of storytelling for a lot of people. And when you theory craft, I think it is a good idea to just sit back and think like, wow, what is it about this game that is making me want to predict this, or what is it about this game that's making me want to say these things in my theory video? And then after you're done with your theory video, you can kind of sit with those feelings for a bit and ask yourself, do I want to write a story revolving around, the thing I just wrote about? And then like let that inspiration drive you, As for all the kayfabe WWE smack talk I do about like certain theories or theorists or whatever, it is just kayfabe. And I think it's a really important activity for people who are just getting their bearings with creativity or creative work,
Like whatever inspires you to be creative in a fandom, whether that's trying to predict what comes next, working off of okay, what emotional like aspects do I want to explore with this particular part of the game, or just inventing your own characters or stuff. Go make 500 skeletons. Like
Oh
all
yeah.
is art begets art begets art, and like
Oh yeah.
as an artist, that is the happiest part of making art is when somebody says, "I made this because of what you made." Like that is the joy in it, and I hope that Toby feels that more than anything.
I think he does. I mean, the whole 10th anniversary stream really felt like that one gif of like All Might from My Hero Academia pointing at the main character and going, "Next is your turn."
Yeah.
Right? Like that, that was the entire message of that stream, and it's a good message,
It is a good. I think it's part of Deltarune's message too.
Yes, definitely. I do think like one of the ultimate messages is going to be like, hey, you might not be able to live with these characters anymore, but they'll stay with you in your heart. And when you write stories, you'll think back to these characters and go, huh, so that's where that comes from. Right? Yeah, exactly. And with that said, I think that's a pretty good place to wrap up.
Thank you so much for having me on. This was so fun.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. I actually really, really appreciate that you agreed to come on to this. And like, I really love your art. I loved your stories. I remember, Dogs of Future Past. I was like watching a dub of that when I was living in Japan, and it felt like it was keeping me company almost. Yeah, it just, you live in a foreign country alone. Sometimes you get a little lonely, but it just, I don't know. I felt like I was befriending the characters along the way, kind of thing.
Good to hear that.
Yeah, and so, of course, it can all, you can always hit me up to talk about Deltarune stuff in general, or just stuff in general. Like again, you have really interesting things to say, and I think part of that, of course, is that we're around the same age, so we have the same cultural context window. But beyond that, it's also just you're a creative person who loves to synthesize the things that inspires them, that inspires you, right? And you're just really into the work that you make. Just don't fall into your invention.
I'll do my best. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
Speaking from experience, in terms of like, it can get real easy to fall into the art and get lost. And
yeah.
There's other people in the world outside for you too.
Yes. So thanks for dropping by. Of course, I will be linking. You have a Patreon, right?
Yes, I do have a Patreon.
Okay, so in the description below, I will be posting all of LynxGriffin's socials and their Patreon, and I'll be linking my own socials. And also, I recently opened up a Ko-Fi, so if you want to give me a tip or something, go ahead. You don't have to. It's just if you want. And I do plan in the future to make more videos. Maybe some of them might be solo theory videos or thematic analysis. I had an idea for a game show that I can talk to you about to you later. I think I've mentioned it at some point, but I would like to do that game show idea at some point. But yeah, so thank you for listening, everyone. And again, a round of applause for LynxGriffin. I don't know if you can hear that. I'm applauding. I don't know if the noise canceling is like stopping it. But
does my noise canceling work? I don't know. But thank you.
Yeah, your noise canceling works. Anyway, good night, everybody, or good whatever time it is. Bye.
Right. Bye.
Bye.